to actually show up on Twitch. Or not. Doesn't really matter. We're live right now anyway.
In some dimension.
Everybody hanging out in Twitch. We got Arthur. We got Giorgio. They are filmmakers. They made a really great documentary. Why don't you say a little bit about yourselves?
Well, I'm a Virgo. It was my 38th birthday last week.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. We made it through another year. I'm a filmmaker, as previously intimated. I work with this man below me, although I don't know what it looks like to the rest of everyone. But
below you, many ways.
And that's Arthur down there.
Yeah, you're to my left, right? But hold on, let me. Anyway, my name's
really
Arthur. It doesn't matter. You sure this is good? All right. My name's Arthur Jones. Before making Feels Good Man, I was an animator, an illustrator, and a fan of Matt Fury's comic books. And this is my first film. This was Giorgio's made several films, but this is my first film, and I'm hoping that some people who've seen it are going to be in the chat and can ask us some good questions.
Oh, we got some Pepes in chat.
Yeah, that was definitely.
I guess we knew that was coming. Yeah.
Twitch is keeping it alive, man.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, we're trying to see.
They're sort of bringing him back. They're saving Pepe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got to see if Microsoft can pony up some sweet bucks for the unofficial mascot. Make it official.
So, Arthur, I'm curious. What exactly did you do for the post-production of the film, like you personally?
Since you have
that kind of background.
So before making Feels Good Man, I worked on this movie that my friend Amy made called Hal, and it's a Hal Ashby biography documentary. And that had been at Sundance in 2018, and I'd done all the motion graphics on her film, and that kind of gave me a little bit of the doc bug. And then Giorgio was making a film that he was directing called Owned, A Tale of Two Americas, and I did a bunch of animation on that film. So in Feels Good Man, I did all the motion graphics, anything that looked like a 4chan board or anything that was like kind of contextual. I did all that stuff, and then I did 1/4 of the cartoons.
Okay, so basically for would you say that you basically searched up internet posts and then recreated them to be higher resolution?
Sometimes we did go into the various 4chan archives, and then we sometimes those are different colors than how the posts originally appeared. Okay. So we would basically recreate them in 4K. Yeah, for the most part. But there's most of them have the specific post number and everything still intact that we grabbed from the archive. But there's we sifted through hundreds, if not thousands, of posts from specific dates and then recreated them for the film.
Yeah, how many terabytes do we have at the office at this point?
Well, I mean, we've been kind of deleting as we go, but I would say so. We have the whole movie's on a 32 terabyte hard drive, and probably half of that is memes
garbage
collected.
Just you got your own meme collection.
We truly do. There was when we were at the True False Film Festival in Columbia, Missouri, there was a kid who attended the last screening, and he was very intense to know about how many terabytes of memes we had collected. But yeah, we had to index hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rare Pepes. But luckily, I mean, there's you can grab entire BitTorrent files of thousands of Pepes. You can 4chan also, there's an area where you can pull basically all the different memes that people have created during a time period on some of the archives. So we pulled those, and
Arthur's kind of underselling it, because the point was how do you make, for those of you in the chat that haven't seen it yet, one of the big struggles of the film was how do you make a movie about the internet, and specifically about a website that is in general just really ugly to look at, like cinematic to experience.
Yeah.
It feels like it's blistering at a simmering at like a really high pace, and that there's a kind of like whodunit vibe to it, especially in certain kind of moments of tension. Like, how do you make a smattering of 4chan posts feel urgent? And like part of that was definitely Arthur's graphic skills, but then also like our sound editor,
who you gave good shout
Yes,
out to in your review, which he really liked, Lawrence Everson.
Good.
He's he's a really creative guy who, it's kind of amazing when you add like a layer of, people don't necessarily think about sound design within a documentary.
They don't.
When you,
or in most films, really.
It's true. But Lawrence mostly does verite docs. And so this was a chance for him to really kind of spread out and do something interesting. And so, yeah, there were some, Giorgio was doing I was doing more of the visual post-production, and he was doing like the audio post-production. And there was like one time where he had like gone up to Lawrence's office, which just coincidentally happened to be in the same building we were working out of. And he was like crying because it sounded so good, because it was just like, it made the film, when we were looking at on the tiny screens on our laptops or whatever down in the office, it felt like a homemade movie. And then you'd go up to Lawrence and he would have it on a big screen and you could hear all the sounds in his great sound system. It really made the film feel like an actual film. We're like, oh, we made a movie before we were it was a pretty amazing transformation.
People don't often notice a lot of the technical elements behind a film unless something's horribly wrong, because it like distracts them. But if all the elements are working together correctly, then it's like, oh, it's just like the experience, and people don't often really, pinpoint those things out of it, unfortunately. But
there's like an aural space that's created that just it's like this connection that happens with your eye and then what you're hearing. And it happens like my background's in music mainly. Like I toured in bands and stuff for most of my 20s, and it's like somewhat similar to when you are. This is kind of why you never want to share a rough mix with anyone who isn't like involved in the recording, because it just sounds very narrow until you really get that final mix and you master it. It just kind of everything kind of pops off the walls. It's the same with when you're rough cutting a film without actual sound design. It's like night and day, and all of a sudden, even if you're looking at a small screen, just like the connection visually and aurally just makes it feel so much bigger.
Yeah, it was crazy. Lawrence did some really ingenious stuff. Like, for instance, there's a couple animations that I'd done that are taking Matt's original comics, and they're like black and white versions of Pepe, and Pepe's moving, or one of the Boys Club guys is moving, and he had blown up balloons and was like rubbing them together to make the sound of like Pepe's eyes blinking and his arms moving and stuff like that, which was pretty ingenious. And then, we were sprinting to the finish line to get the film done. Like we did the final mix in basically one day, which is kind of unreal. Like, a friend of mine worked on the Michelle Obama documentary, and they mixed for 2 weeks on that film.
Oh yeah.
And we were like slotting in graphics like at 4 a.m. the night. So there was sometimes Lawrence was matching to our graphics, and sometimes we were matching to Lawrence's sound effects. I'm still kind of amazed that it all gelled, because it was such a psychotic 2 days figuring all that stuff out.
When was that? Was Sundance the premiere also?
Yeah. So that was we turned the film in like maybe a week and a half before Sundance. So that would have been like mid-January. Like we were right up against the edge of the deadline to turn it in.
But I mean, like the submission for Sundance would have had to been much before that, though, right?
Yeah.
That was in
so
November.
How did that work? So did you give them like a rough cut, and then?
Yeah, typically you send Sundance. You have to be a real tryhard to have a finished locked film. Ready.
We were late, but we were color correcting at the same place where 6 other films were all going. There's like one very cheap doc house that all the documentary filmmakers in LA use. It's funny. So there were like 6 films that were all going to Sundance at the same time, and all vying for like the same color correctors and the same space. And so we were not the last one to turn in. I think we were about the 3rd out of 6. So,
it's funny. They threaten you. They're like, if we don't get it by tomorrow, you're not going to be eligible for awards. And you're like, okay, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, Tom Hooper's Cats wasn't even finished when they released it worldwide. So we got a couple questions in chat. One of them asking if we can all do the Pepe face at the same time.
Which the Pogger's face?
My pants are currently around my ankles, so.
Which face are they referring to?
Man, it's like it's so weird to try and explain. There's just the default
face. Or this one.
One right here. Yeah.
Oh, that's a heavy lidded.
Yeah, basically that one.
Yeah. But now I know that there's a Poggers, which is more like
I tried.
Like that.
Yeah.
Listen, we're not
a valiant effort.
Dance monkeys here. Give us some hard-hitting questions.
Well, somebody else is asking what you're working on next, also.
We've got a couple things in the hopper. Nothing that we can really talk about. We're still very much taking Feels Good Man out to the people in all sorts of different ways. So it's coming out on the BBC in England shortly. We're actually going to be on PBS October 19th.
Awesome.
This weekend. So Adam was a guest for one of our early screenings of the film that we have a website called feelsgoodman.watch. And we did 4 kind of like premiere events because we weren't able to have a real premiere because of the pandemic. And so we're doing another weekend of those, and we have a great lineup for that. We have Q&As hosted by Ann Friedman from the Call Your Girlfriend podcast, Ira Glass from This American Life, and Tim Heidecker.
Awesome.
And
yeah,
so
you guys were mentioning Heidecker
weekend.
earlier. I was curious if it was Tim.
Yeah.
So we're going to be on office hours on Thursday, and then Tim's going to this Saturday. We're doing a special screening where Tim's going to do a Q&A afterwards.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's on the feelsgoodman.watch to access that?
We'll be updating it
Saturday.
Updating it tomorrow so that it actually has the accurate information.
Yeah, now if you go to it, as soon as I get off this, I'm going to be making all the stuff for it.
Like to the original question, what are we working on now? Like, we put the film out ourselves actually because, well, for a variety of reasons. So we're basically we're running like our own independent film distribution company, and it's been a lot of work, but also really fascinating to see the ins and outs, especially during this pandemic. But like, it was just something we were our hand was partly forced to do, but also I think ultimately was the right decision to make because I'm not sure that anyone could have released the film in the right way. But
it's caused some hiccups in the industry.
Yeah, for sure.
Christopher Nolan didn't even care. He was like, let's get it out. We're being the guinea pigs.
Well, I think there was this situation at Sundance where we got really great press and everyone really loved it and all of our screenings were sold out. And there's this kind of like presumption that if you go to Sundance, like you're going to get this big deal and you're going to leave with like money bags from the top of the mountains. And then your life is set. But the truth is like, there's literally thousands, but definitely hundreds of movies that go there and never see the light of day. And
of course.
Yeah.
I mean, even Cannes. There's tons of movies that premiere at Cannes that nobody knows about, right?
And docs are even its own. They're docs that like you would think would be so. For example, there was a film at Sundance called Us Kids that's about the Parkland kids, and that one I just assumed was going to be like a huge hit doc, and that has yet to find like the right home.
We have all these working theories about like what's going on in the sort of consolidation streaming world, but certainly like Us Kids, and I think to some extent us kids like have had like a very weird experience where we're like, to the point that when in our premiere screening, the first person to talk to me and Arthur after we got up out of our seats was the woman who runs Independent Lens for PBS, and she was just like so effusive in her praise of the film, and it was like really moving to see someone finally, who wasn't involved in the film.
And it's also very rare that someone who's like on the industry side like breaks the cone of silence, sort of. Yeah, like no one from Netflix is going to come up and talk to you. They would have like an agent talk to someone who would talk to someone.
Lots of red
you
tape.
As a filmmaker wouldn't even know. Yeah, you wouldn't even be part of those
publicists and PR people and that whole bullshit.
All of
Yep,
it.
a lot of
But you
bullshit.
and it is bullshit. And I think we both went in clearly as like DIY filmmakers that had made this
Yeah.
independently. And we realized very quickly that bullshit is just necessary to get the film seen by the right people. Even at Sundance, part of the battle is getting the people to come to your screening and not another film.
Yeah.
And so you really have to kind of play that game, even
Yeah.
though it's kind of uncomfortable. And the thing that we would constantly say, it's like we had to finish the film and then throw a wedding for the film at the exact same time.
Exactly.
And then we had to like raise money for the wedding. Like it's even for our tiny film, it is a crazy hill to climb. And it's kind of like then the final big boss mode is like selling the film. And I felt like we had just shot through all the different levels, and then the big boss was there, and we just,
and then the boss sort of killed us.
yeah.
So like,
and through a variety of factors.
What was the distribution process like then? Because you self-distributed, right? Or how did that work?
So we went through like a long period after the festival, kind of sussing out half offers or this or that, and then the pandemic hit, and it kind of like recalibrated everything. And then there was this moment where there was this belief that all the streamers were going to like pay hand over fist for content because they needed it, because they could go in production for new stuff. And if this is going to last a whole year, like, well, man, if you're sitting on a finished film, you're sitting on a mound of cash. But the thing about market consolidation and monopolies is that they don't give a fuck. So we were like, okay, I think we had an opportunity to go the more traditional route, but like they couldn't assure us that the film would come out before the election, and that was kind of a non-starter for the whole.
And also they were giving us literally zero money down.
Yeah,
like they were literally giving. They were willing to pay for marketing, but they weren't actually willing to give us terms in which we could ever theoretically recoup.
Yeah.
And so we decided to figure out how to do it on our own, and it's been like a very interesting. And also, we had Pepe. Like we knew that this film did have an audience. People were interested in seeing it. It had we were confident in the art that we made, and then also just confident that it was a story people were already curious about. So that gave us, but at that end, I see someone in the chat asking about other films from this year. There's an amazing group of documentary films this year, which still exist out there, kind of just in the ether. There's some great movies coming out like Boys State and Time. They're amazing films. I think
but movies might already be out.
Yeah, it's out.
It's out. Yeah,
it's a solid. That's just a solid steak dinner. Is what that movie is.
Yeah. Okay. Time though is the best movie of the year.
Yeah.
Time is the best movie of the year.
Time is like going.
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh my goodness!
It's on my watch list.
It's like it's somehow
I don't know who's going to beat Kaufman for me though.
Oh really? See that one? Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet.
We watched it. It's it's beautiful and infuriating, and I think if
I'm working on like an analysis of it right now. That's actually what I was doing like 20 minutes ago.
I'm going to be very curious to see your review of it.
I'll be out in like next week. This week, I guess.
My controversial. You want to hear my controversial take on that movie?
Wait, do we have a controversial take theme music?
Are you going to be a real Mark Kermode right now, or what?
I don't know who that is. Who's that?
It's a film critic from BBC who has a beef with Kaufman right now, kind of, and has been making a lot of like really passive-aggressive tweets towards him.
I have no beef with Kaufman. I just feel like Jesse Plemons was miscast. I think they should have.
Oh, yeah?
I think the film would have been a much different film if they just had someone with a little bit more natural charisma. It would have been a little bit. I don't know.
No,
I feel like he
completely disagree.
I know.
And when my video's out, I might change your perspective on that.
Okay, I look forward to watching it.
I think it's just I
think that it is very purposeful that he's not incredibly charismatic.
I think it's purposeful, absolutely. But there's a part of me that just needed something to carry the film for me,
like a Brad Pitt type character.
No. I feel like Jesse Plemons is a good actor, but he just kind of plays sad all the time. I feel like he didn't have a lot of range. That's my take on it.
Okay.
I just want to touch his face every time it's on screen. I just want to like sculpt it.
It's a little pillowy. Yeah.
I love it.
He's a plasticine.
It's beyond that. It's like muscular. I love him. Yeah. I am a big fan.
I'm a big fan of him from Friday Night Lights.
Yeah, exactly.
Crucifixtorious, the band that he has in Friday Night Lights.
Oh, right.
It'd be very endearing.
So to get back to like self-distributing,
Sure.
so as it is right now, you retain like the complete rights to your film because you haven't sold it, right? So
Correct.
We've had a variety of international deals. So in some territories, we have sold it,
like licensing. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, for instance, in Canada, we have a small licensing deal. In Australia, we have, it's like you kind of
piecemeal it together.
Yeah, you piecemeal it together. Like if you don't have like Netflix, which is basically a worldwide deal, then you end up piecemealing it together. And they're two completely different economies. Like you have an international sales agent and a domestic sales agent. And they're all bureaucracies that you kind of have to figure out.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who constantly ask especially of Germans, I find. Germany is probably number one, then Mexico, and then Spain, I think, people are asking like, when is it coming out here? And I wish, you want to tell them like, and sometimes they'll send you like very angry emails as if you're doing it just to spite them. They're like, why don't you just make it available in my country? And it's like,
it's a weird phenomenon of like, why aren't you assholes on Netflix?
Exactly.
Like as if that's in our power.
Yeah.
Why aren't your assholes in our country? Oh, and here's the site that I stole it from. And here's all the screen grabs of all the other people that have stolen it. Like you'd be surprised.
You get emails like that basically threatening you with piracy.
Constantly. Not even threatening. It's like, hey, I watched your movie. Here's where I streamed it from.
Well, I understand that. Like I empathize with that a lot because in my mind it's just like I'm in Canada, right? So like a lot of the times I don't get the release right away and I'm thinking like I want to give you money. Let me give you money, right? But yeah, there is like a lot of red tape and stupid bullshit that prevents that from happening. When I have a big issue with it, it's usually when it's like a big studio production when I see no real good legitimate reason why it shouldn't be distributed throughout every country.
Yeah,
when it's like a big studio sort of thing, right? When you're doing an independent release, then obviously there are legitimate reasons why that's not possible right away.
Yeah, our goal is for it to obviously be seen as many people as possible.
Yeah,
there's popular all over the world.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's just that we're trying our best. But I will say this. If you really can't wait and you would like to see it, just email us and we can figure something out. How about that?
Oh yeah, if you own the rights to the film.
Yeah, it's much easier actually when there's no red tape.
There's no limitations, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Would you say, you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to, would you say that like sales have been good? Would you say that it's been selling well?
Yeah, I think I think the thing with releasing a digital film or film digitally versus in the theaters is that it just has a much different life cycle, right? Like when you release theatrically, 80% of your sales are going to happen the opening weekend. And so everything hinges on that opening weekend. And if you have a bad opening weekend, you're basically like shit out of luck.
Oh yeah.
with digital releases, you get the sense we've had very little shift week over week, day over day with sales generally. So you get the sense that people are sharing it and putting on their watch lists, and actually
word of mouth
is really good. But then, even if you do want to self-release, though, the irony is that you still have to participate in the oligopoly of distribution, right? Because you still have to put it on Amazon, you still have to put it on iTunes. But those people have been like the curators and those platforms have actually, like, I think if you go to Amazon US right now, we're actually prominently featured, which is
awesome.
Thanks
Jeff
Bezos. So yeah, it's doing well. But we also were the number 2 most pirated film on Pass the Popcorn on Mulan last weekend.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, in ways,
it's
it's
awesome.
bittersweet, right?
Exactly.
There's a demand for it.
Exactly.
Totally. And I think you just kind of have to embrace that chaos. But, and I'm someone that has, BitTorrented films for years, in part because they're like films that I wanted to see that maybe were obscure or you couldn't immediately rent. But it actually feels different to be on the other side of it. It does feel, because it's like, I don't know. I remember
if you're trying anyway to get it seen everywhere, right?
It's fun.
Exactly.
Like I remember I was talking to my girlfriend and we were talking about like, there was this, I remember like when I was younger seeing like a quote from Eminem where he talked about how when he was growing up, he just assumed that anyone who was on TV was rich. And I think a lot of people just assume that, oh, you made a film, you're like rich. But the reality is that it's like, you're a very scrappy artist, and most people Making a film is a tremendous luxury. There's only a handful of people that are really able to like sort of pay themselves well for the films that they make. And that's part of the gamble, especially with documentary. Like, there's thousands of documentaries made a year, and there's really only like 5 or 6 that kind of like punch through the mainstream.
Yeah. There's a lot more documentaries at film festivals than there are in major worldwide distribution releases.
Yeah. But honestly, I'd be curious.
People underestimate. I think the distributors underestimate people's ability to watch documentaries. They only pick documentaries that are about like killers and celebrities.
Well, I mean, that's also been evidenced by Netflix. A lot of documentaries have gotten really popular there. So
it's like, I hope it's like a kind of cultural moment where they're getting you in with the cheap calories of a kind of like Joe Exotic type vibe, but then they're gonna hit you back with like a Honeyland or something like that. So people kind of start to understand that, because there's this other thing that happens in traditional doc filmmaking audiences where you'll get like comments from people where they're like, this documentary didn't have enough facts. Because like for a certain group of traditional documentary film viewers, they think that a documentary is just like basically an essay put to video, and they don't see it as actually film first and then documentary second.
That's I mentioned that in my review for this, is like, regardless of whether or not I'm personally aligning with the beliefs presented in a documentary film, like one of the most important things is how it's presented, and that's something that was done really well.
Oh, thanks. So what is there a movie like that where you did not agree with the premise that you appreciated?
Oh man, well, that's a good question. One where I completely disagree with the premise, but it's well presented enough. I mean, there are like bits and pieces of some documentaries where I feel like they lean into certain parts of the issues that they probably should. Like, so there was the new one. Did you ever see the documentary The Corporation?
Yes, for sure.
They released a sequel that I just saw it for TIFF online, and I liked it a lot. It wasn't nearly as good as the first one. And like parts of the documentary were basically, they were like kind of montages that included the titles of articles without really delving into them, which I just feel like is not like a great practice for it. Right. Because it doesn't really give you the full context of what they're talking about. And yeah, so things like that where I'm like, but it's well presented still. And like overall, I agree with the general premise of that documentary. I don't know if there's one that I've like completely disagreed with where I've given it a great rating for being well presented, because at the same time, I do kind of hate this pretend substance sort of thing that you see not only in some documentaries but also on some YouTube channels. Like, how PragerU videos have all of the graphics to make you feel like it's something informative and educational, but what is actually being said doesn't really back that up. So I mean, like,
that's what's really
it's great to have both, is what I'm saying. That's ideal.
This is something that like I'm intensely interested in. Like the first documentary I directed was called Owned: A Tale of Two Americas. It's about housing discrimination, sort of the legacy of housing discrimination in America. But from the onset, I was really interested in trying to see like how can you make a kind of didactic documentary, but more interesting, where it's not simply just about relaying facts on screen with graphs and stuff, but actually kind of getting to the emotions of it. And, I think we did a pretty decent job, and Arthur definitely helped in that endeavor. But like Time, to me, is an astounding piece of artwork because it's a film about a subject that is really didactic in a certain way. It is about prison reform, but there's like no talking heads. There's no data. It's like purely emotional, and it is so powerful.
And the exposition, it's interesting. Yeah, I've seen Time in a few different audiences now, and some people have like a real kind of Law and Order take on it, but they let the exposition unfold in a very like slow and kind of casual way. But it's like the movie just kind of feels like a boulder slowly gathering weight. And then the end, you're kind of watching it and you're like, man, how are they going to stick the ending to this thing? And then you're just like, oh shit, like
I'm
this
very
is
curious
really
to
powerful.
see. I'm curious to see if Amazon keeps the original ending.
Yeah, I'm curious too. I wonder what the rating will be. But the but
We're
yeah,
giving away
but it's a really unique, surprising, beautiful film that somehow is about American prison reform, but feels like a French New Wave film. But it's a documentary.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's like
Yeah, it's on my
good.
watch list. I'll be looking forward to it whenever it's available. Yeah.
What's up on?
I also, if you're looking for docs, The Mole Agent came out. I don't think it's a self-release, but it's rentable. And that movie is like an extremely well-made, very watchable, super enjoyable
I'm gonna
film.
watch that tonight.
Yeah, I think I added that one to my watch list before.
Yeah,
too.
it's like, it's a delightful doc, super well made.
Have you seen The Social Dilemma yet?
The Social Dilemma. No, I have not.
You have any? Oh, maybe it's because you're in Canada, but everyone in the United States
Possibly.
is just freaking out about that.
They just won't shut up. They just want to talk to us about it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was actually I was talking to Jim Cummings, the director, not the voice actor, the director of Thunder Road.
Yeah.
And he was telling me like one of the best financial decisions he's ever made in his life was just to retain the rights to his film Thunder Road.
Oh man,
because that one actually, like the way that he released it, he did have a theatrical release too, and it just happened to be this sleeper hit in France. He got really lucky in that sense too. I mean, it's a great movie either way.
It also just, I mean, talk about, it's something that we've been talking about with our executive producers too, is just like, this thing is just gonna have a much longer lifespan, and the part about retaining it is to see it move through different audiences. And like Thunder Road is a perfect example, because I came to it probably a year after it came out, having never heard it, but it just kind of popped up on an Amazon thing. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, and I used to live in Austin, and I recognized some of these names. And then like when I saw it, then I started seeing it pop up in a bunch of other places on other people's recommended lists. And it's just, the thing today is that you're being bombarded with so much fucking like content, right? There's like content, and then there's film, and you kind of it takes a while for people to sift through the content to get to the golden nugget or something. Still working on the phrase.
And we also knew we made a cult film, like like my favorite movies are cult films, and this is a cult film for kind of a cult audience. Like that's just the reality of it.
I think that it's a good enough movie that, it does have longevity in that sense, and through word of mouth, more people will discover it. And coming up to the end of the year, in the next few months, it'll show up on a bunch of top 10 lists, and more people will check it out. So the fact that you're retaining the rights to it, I think is a really good thing, honestly.
Let's hope.
We feel confident in our decision. I mean, certainly I don't think anyone could have handled it better than we did. We've seen other distributors kind of bungle this moment. So with good films. And
that's kind of a part of the game, is in a weird way, is like a lot of films get picked up by a distributor, but the distributor just doesn't really do anything with it, which is also incredibly unfortunate and just really stressful to think about.
Well, and I think there was just this big fear too, that we to some extent shared before the film came out, which was like, how are people going to take this film? Like, is it going to be this toxic thing that just gets gobbled up by the bad people online, or will people understand what it's about, what the context is? And like, I think we're very, very pleased to see that the light has shown, right? Like there's like it's been very, very minimal, knock on wood, very, very minimal sort of negative backlash. I mean, the sort of typical internet garbage that you would expect we've seen, but it's been very minimal.
I think that would have been more of a possibility if your documentary felt like way too pandering and preachy, which it didn't really feel, I think that was a lot of people's apprehension upon seeing the trailer, was like, oh, this is just going to be some like preachy, like you're just going to talk about the alt-right.
We
hated the trailer.
Right? Yeah, we didn't make the trailer for you. We didn't make the trailer for you. We made the trailer for the traditional thought-going audience.
I'm just trying to, I'm trying to say that's totally. A lot of there's a mentality there that I think is shared among a lot of people in the internet
100%.
crowd.
100%. 100%.
No, I think that's fine. I think, a trailer is, any trailer to a certain degree is bait and switch. Like that's just the way it is. you know.
Yeah.
And so I don't think our trailer was necessarily bait and switch, but I do think we realized a number of things. We realized that like we wanted to avoid a certain amount of Trump fatigue. You know, there is like kind of a predominant like audience for documentary films, and that is not a younger group of people. You know, so you know there was, I think it was also like we wanted the trailer to have a sense of irreverence to it too, and I think it does have that. I think like even if you look at the trailer and you're like, man, these guys don't necessarily get it, you'll at least kind of understand like, oh, maybe this movie is going to surprise me. So, but you know, I hear you. You can't please all the people all the time. But you know, we've kind of counteracted that by doing like all sorts of other wild social media stuff that, you know, that does not feel like the trailer. That I think that kind of shows a different look of the film and
that's why
look on what we're into as artists.
I fought to keep the pee-pee thing at the end of the trailer to be a kind of our wink at the those who are.
Well, it's got to get a sense of humor, and it's also like a really good character study. I think that's what helps elevate it.
Yeah.
And there's an element of farce to the entire film.
Yeah.
You know,
of course.
How can you do a story about a stone cartoon frog and not have moments of it feel like complete farce or political theater?
Yeah. It's very, very self-aware, which is part of the reason why it works so well.
For sure.
Yeah, it's great to hear. We had so many conversations about trying to figure out that right tone.
So what's the scene like in Canada? Are there movie theaters open now?
Technically, yeah. I'm not going to them. I saw Tenet at a drive-in.
What was that like?
It was the second drive-in I've ever been to. It was no issues really. The FM radio audio was like crisp and clear.
Oh,
I had my own volume control. I felt safe. I didn't have to interact with anybody. It worked out well. Did not like the movie, but otherwise, it was a good experience.
We did have a very minimal theatrical release, and I did go to one screening, which was definitely surreal. But I just poked my head in to take a video of the credit roll, just so I could prove that it actually happened.
Yeah,
bolted.
Yeah,
that's so funny.
And it was like we did a lot of work, like booking independent theaters, hoping that, like, oh man, sure. Like when we were trying to find options for it in like May or June, we we're like, things will surely be open by August or September. Like, well, we will have surely worked this shit out. Nope.
Oopsie.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
P.S. Everybody in chat. We had no plan for this. We're kind of just shooting the shit. So if you want to ask any questions, there's a chance we will respond to your questions also. Questions are open. Just letting you know.
Someone at the top was asking about when it's coming out in Europe. But so it just depends. It depends. If you live in the UK, Scandinavia, Poland, and I don't know, one other country, it's coming out soon. And we'll be releasing that information here soon. Okay. It is out in Canada. Someone says, I think Pepe's illegal in Canada. That they're just talking about the image. Is that true?
Yeah. No. Oh. They're being an internet commenter.
Oh
by
no.
Saying things that are just
not true?
True.
Oh no.
You really think someone would do that? Just go on the internet and tell lies?
Well, in Germany they have, you can't, like, the swastika is banned, and you just never know. Canadians are very nice, so I just assume the best.
I think so.
I had this interaction with we've had like a burst of negative response from #resistance moms on Twitter
I'm not familiar with that.
So resistance, like the #resistance, is a sort of semi-pejorative term for kind of normie older people who are against Trump, but who are maybe like not against him for
just kind of your standard neoliberal,
yeah. And so
mainstream Democrat,
right? And so our ad, was one ad running, and it must have like locked into a certain like mom group, and I started getting a handful of comments from them that were like flagging this flagging this for hate content, and I'd have to like sit there and like explain to them like, hey, actually just watch the trailer you're commenting on. It's not actually what it is. And
Yeah, you'd have to not watch the trailer, that's kind of interesting that you would get those comments at all.
well, it's like very indicative of like why the world is falling apart. It's simply from that
I agree.
one base like reptilian response to just react before doing even the bare minimum worth of research into what you're
that's what I was talking about with those like just titles of articles without getting into the substance.
Yes.
You know, people do that on Reddit every single day. They read the title, they're like, I agree, upvote. But then you go into the comments and it's like, okay, this title is sensationalized, here's why. But I guess most people don't do that.
That's what I heard. Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, was being recently interviewed. I can't remember where, but they were talking about like, what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to change this cesspool of shit that you've created? And one of his big fixes was that they're toying with the idea of doing some sort of retweet edit, or not edit. I don't even know what you would call it, where like, if you're retweeting an article that you actually didn't click to read, it won't let you retweet it until you've actually clicked to read the article.
See, that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
I don't know if like Twitter is nearly as bad as Facebook for like political bubbles.
100%.
Because Facebook, their entire algorithm is completely designed around keeping you in your own bubble.
And it's by far
not
the most
good.
toxic responses.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it is like, and it's weird because it's not anonymous, and you click on someone's picture and it's like them with their grandmother in hospice, but they've just posted some swastika meme or something. Yeah. It's a confusing window into culture right now for sure.
Yeah. Facebook is like, in terms just with someone with an architectural background, I like to think about things in infrastructures, but Facebook is like the kind of gated community, cul-de-sac community. And then Twitter is more of like your urban New York type center where you can have like your ideas, but invariably you're going to have to get on the subway and interact with someone else. Like you're going to have these moments of friction.
That makes sense.
And
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Thank you. I've been thinking about this.
Twitter expert.
I know almost nothing of Twitter. I'm not on it.
It's all right. I mostly use it for networking, because you were talking about earlier with just like the bullshit red tape and bureaucracy of like PR people and publicists and all that. Like the ways that I've communicated with people, the ways that I've communicated with both of you and like reached out has just been over like, okay, following an account, they're following me, I can send a message, right? That's the same with like any YouTuber that I've collaborated with. That was how I got an interview with Charlie Kaufman, as I was mutuals with the other director that he was working on, Duncan. No, what is it? Why am I blanking on his name right now? Director of Anomalisa with him. Duke Johnson. Thank you.
Duke Johnson.
I was about to say Duncan Jones, another DJ, but I was like, that's not
David.
I know
Bowie's
that's not who he is.
Yeah.
It's just and like most recently, like other not only interviews but also like being able to get like press material for movies. It's just been like this one-on-one sort of interaction of like, hey, I'm communicating with a person. I really don't like going through all that red tape sort of like publicist stuff, although I have done it before, but it's just like makes me uncomfortable. It's like not a real interaction.
Yeah, you're probably at the level where you're kind of on the cusp of that stuff, because then the only way to get to certain publications is only via a publicist.
Yeah, which is also
often or a publicist validates you within the industry. It's like, oh, you can have like a conversation with someone, but then if you have a publicist reach out to them, it has this air of professionalism that people respond to.
Yeah, I mean, like there's YouTubers my size and even lower than that have like publicists, agents, managers, all that stuff.
That's crazy.
And I just do everything like completely independently. So I'm not a big fan of the whole
I agree.
system.
So how much of your day is doing that kind of stuff, and then how much is like
just like reaching out to people?
Well, reaching
Not
out to
much of
people,
it is.
maintaining your DMs, like all that sort of stuff.
Not much of it is that. I mean, like my Twitter DMs go to my phone and everything too. So, uh, if I get a notification, I'm either checking that like before bed or when I wake up, unless I'm like expecting a message
Right.
from somebody about something. Most of what I do is just like editing, watching movies, recording stuff, just part of
Living
the
the dream.
process of making the actual content.
We got a bunch of questions here. I feel like we should probably start
Go for it.
letting the people know. Hold on. Let's look through the good ones
You
here.
can scroll up.
Oh yeah, I'm scrolling up. Well, here's a simple one to get us started. What are some of your favorite documentaries of all time, and what documentaries have influenced Feels Good Man?
The Act of Killing is one of my favorites of all time.
Ooh,
Agree.
100%.
Director's cut, still great. It's
That
just
was
more of the same.
my friend
Really great movie.
from high school, Zach Heinzerling, who actually introduced me to my wife, was the director of Cutie and the Boxer, which came out that same year. And I remember
I remember that one.
that was a really beautiful film. That was a great year for docs. But
Mhm.
man, I remember seeing The Act of Killing at the MoMA during their director's fortnight, and that was like one of the top three like in-person theatrical experiences.
Yeah, it's so good. I was excited about Act of Killing because I'd read all the reviews, and then I had BitTorrented a version of it, and it was actually like a rough cut. It was like a rough cut of and it was obviously there were some sections that didn't have music, like there was sections that were still like in raw assembly form, and yeah, and then I BitTorrented it again, and it was like a different edit. So I don't know. Yeah, ultimately I just bought it and it was fine. But yeah,
which documentaries influenced us on this film?
I mean, honestly, for
Dear
me, as we were
Zachary.
making it, I mean, Dear Zachary is a weird film. Like that kind of goes back to talking about maybe something you were talking about before. Like formally, Dear Zachary feels as though it was made on iMovie or something.
It wasn't even in HD when they released it. Their Blu-ray, he actually went through all the original like DV tapes and like film footage to re-edit the entire movie and also bring it into like 5.1.
Really?
It's like, yeah, literally reconstructed the entire movie for the 10-year anniversary Blu-ray.
It's almost like an outsider film. It's a unique film. And it is effective. Like, I don't know if I like love it, but I find it interesting, both just in terms of the craziness of the story that does keep surprising you, and it's just like rawness, like it's formal rawness.
I was going to use that word too.
Yeah.
Very raw.
I do like a lot of raw documentaries. I like documentaries from kind of an older era. Like I love Hale County. I love,
Hale County's like 3 years ago.
Oh, not Hale County. Sorry. Sorry. The coal mining.
Oh yeah. Right.
What is it? What's it called?
Now I'm forgetting. From Kentucky.
It's like the classic. It's like
Hale.
It's not.
Oh my God. No.
I can't believe
Is it Harlan County?
Harlan County. There,
yes.
Yeah.
So Harlan County, excuse me. Or like Les Blanc movies. I like movies that feel as though they were still kind of like edited on film. I do. It's interesting. The stuff that influenced Feels Good Man was more like I watched all the documentaries about the internet and I hated all of them.
Exactly.
And I was like,
Good.
these are the things that we can't do in this film because they're terrible choices. And so that was actually artistically more informative for me while we were like cutting it and thinking about how the film felt. So we definitely like took some broad swings in making the film and editing the film. But the thing that we kept coming back to is like, the story of Pepe can be everything. And when it becomes everything, then it kind of just like turns into tissue paper and falls apart.
Right.
So we our editor, Aaron, created this like mantra that I think at first Giorgio and I maybe balked against, but he invented this thing called the thin green line. which is basically just simply, we just always have to bring it back to Pepe. We have to bring, so even if we're like going, so we're like, we're not going to get into Gamergate. That doesn't make sense for this film. We're not going to get lost in the weeds of all this other stuff. What we really want to do is make it about like the emotions of Pepe, because ultimately we didn't want to make a documentary. We wanted to make a movie. And so, those were the things that we thought about. But, I watched a lot of Nick Broomfield films while we were making it. Even though those films have nothing to do with Feels Good Man in any way, shape, or form. But I think his movies are hilarious messes. And when they're good, they're good. And when they're terrible, they're always interesting. So
yeah, I was going to say, actually, it's like less documentaries influence for me and more like narrative films in some sense, just in the way that, like, to your point about the thin green line about Pepe, like we wanted the emotional arc to feel there and then be partly informational, but like the creative desires are really more rooted in a kind of traditional theatrical scripted experience about like making you care about this frog. So when he swims off in the end, hopefully you cry, you shed a tear, and you're a little reflective about what you just experienced.
Yeah, I mean, that is a criticism we've gotten from like some hardcore doc people. They're like, oh, well, at the end, it doesn't sort of sum it up with this like tight sort of button about like maybe in the way like a social network, a social dilemma or something would. And, but we really wanted to inject a certain sense of poetry into the film. We thought that was just going to be kind of like part of its power. And we wanted the film to feel like if you were watching it, you wanted to feel like, oh, I'm interested to see how this unfolds. Whether you're really like immersed within like the politics of Chan culture or not, like you're at least going to be sort of surprised by it. Or if you know the Pepe story, maybe we'll show you some stuff that you didn't think you knew about it.
Here's an interesting question that kind of comes up a lot in comments around town, so it's nice to address it here. So should Pepe belong to the public domain, or should Matt Fury have the right to decide who and who not uses it? Okay, so that's an interesting question. So look, Matt's an artist, and for anyone who's ever created anything, like the only reason anything can ever happen is like in a larger sense is because of copyright, right? Like if you don't have the ability to copyright your work, like the whole sort of organized world kind of falls apart. So I take issue on its face that like an artist shouldn't be able to defend his artwork. That said,
it's also like, constitutionally protected. It's also if you're a total like it's like it's in the Constitution in the same way the Second Amendment is.
Right. And so, but that said also, Matt has never had any issue with like, he's very enamored. Like certainly like he sends me all these emails he gets from Twitch streamers who like sometimes he just sent me one last night. This Twitch streamer asked him for his approval to use a Pepe as their avatar. Like that stuff is great. Like the idea of remixing and like is a kind of punk aesthetic that anyone our generation kind of grew up with. Like it's of course absurd, the idea that you wouldn't want or would want to prevent people from like remixing your artwork.
The internet has changed things.
Exactly. The main issue though is when bad faith actors take that artwork because of what they think it represents or how they think it could benefit them, and then try to use it to spread bad messaging or then profit from it.
Yeah, I mean, he objected it for it to be used as propaganda.
Exactly.
And I would also encourage people. There's another way of like thinking about it. He could have actually like handled this in a different way that also would have been terrible. Like if he'd become the sort of person that would just get in Twitter fights over and over again about Pepe. Like people sometimes say like, oh, he was to this or to that, but he could have been super aggressive with all of this and it could have gone really terribly. Matt in general is someone that doesn't like confrontation and realizes that people often use Pepe in really creative ways. And like what he says in the film is like, I don't want to sue other artists. And so, his take on it, the thing that ultimately he was like, I have to do something, and copyright was really the only thing he could do. Was when people were making Islamophobic propaganda aimed at 4 and 5-year-olds. And Matt felt like that was particularly
far.
kind of toxic.
Yeah.
And he he realized that also copyright is something that you do have to maintain precedent on. So if he is someone where he's going to fight that copyright, that builds a certain precedent. And then if he's going to take on another copyright issue, that's going to carry over. And it allows him to have more agency with the character. But Matt also realizes that Pepe's just loose. Like, he's not going to like sit
delusional
there and worry about like every single person posting a meme. He doesn't care if you post a Pepe meme.
But what you guys also have to appreciate too is that, Matt is just a guy, like there's no huge corporation pumping billions of dollars into marketing behind Pepe. He created a piece of artwork that initially connected with a certain cohort of the internet purely on the basis of its quality as a piece of art that people emotionally connected to, and it took off from there and is now arguably probably like one of the biggest icons in the cartoon world in the world without any marketing dollars spent. Whereas you have like people like, or not people, but cartoon characters like SpongeBob or Mickey Mouse or any number of more famous cartoons, traditional cartoons that have been Nazified or done all sorts of shit to. But everyone knows when they see those versions of those pieces of artwork, they're derivations. And Matt never had the benefit of the doubt on that side because he never had a Nickelodeon or a Disney supporting it, right?
The public perception of it was not well known before the point of it being appropriated. And that's like just a consequence of it being the most versatile meme ever. It's just like you have people that are using it in good faith ways, just having fun with it, and then other people that are trying to use it as propaganda. So
I think there's also a newer element to kind of this discussion. I mean, I think probably like 10 or 15 years ago, the death of the artist part of the discussion would have been more interesting. But now if you are someone who is basically trying to make it in the internet economy, you have to kind of treat your art like a brand. And that's something that a lot of artists don't feel comfortable with. But when all of a sudden like Matt's brand becomes hate speech, it's something that really doesn't allow him to do other things in the marketplace. There were people who thought Matt was like an alt-right guy. Like I went into meetings where people assumed Matt was a neo-Nazi. And
that's crazy.
It's crazy, but it's real.
Arthur, explain that because people don't understand. Like before we started making Feels Good Man.
So before we started making Feels Good Man, I was trying to collaborate with Matt in a variety of ways. We were trying to work on like maybe like a cartoon project. He had something in the works at Adult Swim. And, Matt has an idiosyncratic style. Like all of Matt's stuff looks a little bit like Pepe the Frog. It has bug eyes. It has this kind of like retro aesthetic. There's something cute and creepy about it. It uses a similar color palette. And people would see his work and be like, oh, this is the Pepe guy. And the assumption was that he was putting all of these terrible versions of Pepe out into the marketplace for people that are not terribly online, Pepe is like a very popular character within a very niche group of people. And so it really kind of prevented Matt from being able to make a living as an artist, which he had been. And it's easy for people to criticize it, but it is very hard to make your living as an independent artist. It is something that's exceptionally difficult to do. And so he ultimately protecting Pepe and getting the word out about his original intentions for the character allows him to be an artist and sell his artwork. It doesn't have this negative baggage, that's the idea at least. And so sure, I would ask if people are just like, yeah, whatever, it's bootleg, it's whatever, just for a second, entertain the idea that this might affect Matt in a personal way. And that your take on it may not be another person's take on it, and Matt is entitled to have a feeling about it.
It's his creation, man.
And so I do think there's kind of an interesting thing that we wanted to approach in the film where there's this notion that if you just kind of do things within the vacuum of the internet and you're this anonymous person, that your words don't carry meaning or they don't carry weight, or that you don't have a voice because you're just part of this crowd. But the reality is you do, and there is a butterfly effect to the things that we do. And so I do think kind of placing his true intentions as a person, I hope does have some sort of emotional resonance, whether you've used Pepe as a meme or not, you know, or if you've recognized him, or if you've recoiled from it, or if you've laughed at it, then, you know, maybe the film will affect you in a surprising way. Or maybe you're too cynical and you don't give a fuck and you enjoy that and you just think like nihilism is the only like credible answer to anything. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, those are the things we were thinking about while making it.
I think you'll find soon, though, if you do have that, which I don't, Adam, want to say that any of the beautiful fans on this stream right now would ever hold these kinds of opinions. But if you have friends who feel that way, I think you'll find that it's a kind of one-way street to Shitsville. And like, there's a different path, and like, you can't build a society on cynicism and nihilism. And like, you're seeing it play out in the US right now, right? Like the fact that our COVID death rate is as high as it is a direct consequence of it.
But I feel like at the same time, like also if we're talking about internet culture specifically, like that's one of the places where people feel more comfortable expressing that kind of emotion, right? And
Totally.
so it makes sense that, especially with Pepe coming out in that time period where the internet was just starting to become like this mainstream thing. It wasn't just like a bunch of people on message boards and a bunch of nerds anymore. It was all of a sudden it's a normal part of everyone's lives, and memes are something that like everybody's using, right? It almost seems like kind of inevitable just based on the timing of it all.
Well, that's the irony, right? It's like you have this group of people who feel that they're disenfranchised and have no power, all of a sudden seem to have actually quite a bit of influence. So it's like you kind of want to be like, well, which one is it, right? Like, do you have agency? Do you have influence in the world around you, or do you not? You can't really play it both ways. And I don't know.
But it is also interesting because I think part of that moment you're talking about, Adam, was this moment where, people would identify as people who were online or people who were like on the internet. It was their own sort of like subcategory, their own youth culture. And that was a creative space. 4chan became popular
Very much so.
because it was a creative space.
Yeah.
It was the place that you would make memes. You would have these like long, hilarious threads with people adding on to like different images. The jokes would be like, would occupy you for hours going through them. And so this sort of like, whatever, the normie invasion, or it was really also just kind of like people being frustrated that this very like uncreative group of people were sort of coming into the internet and gentrifying kind of. And so
fucking normies.
Yeah. And
I loved the re section in your documentary. I'm so happy you I'm so happy you had the re in there. That was so great.
I mean, you have to have the re in there. The re is a huge part of it.
So speaking of which, someone asked, do you guy lost the ability to enjoy memes after
I'll be right back. I gotta pee real quick.
Okay, we're
keep
on a pee
answering
break here.
Chat questions.
Okay,
I'll be right back.
So do we no longer enjoy memes? No, I quite enjoy memes. I'm just terrified that they're gonna ruin democracy across the world. But no, I personally really still like memes a lot. My favorite meme account right now, it's a very niche meme account, but if you're into design or architecture, there is an Instagram handle called Dank Lloyd Wright, which is really one of the most beautiful, thoughtful, hysterical meme accounts. It really does memes right. To me, a great meme, it's got layers, it's got onions, and it just it unfolds.
It's got onions.
It's got onions on onions.
Yeah.
So I still like.
Yeah.
I still like a lot of Pepe memes too, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I know. There were, when we were making the film, there were definitely like, we'd be going through like folders of Pepe memes, like looking for maybe something specific, and we would always be like like there was this meme of like where someone had done a Pepe cache of like that old image of The Rock with the turtleneck and the rope chain and all that, and they've done it as Pepe, and it's so like good. We were both like in tears looking at that. Pepe is a great meme. He's a hilarious meme.
Someone asked why. To that end, someone asked earlier, why do you think Pepe has lasted as long as it's lasted? Because you've mentioned this a lot. It's very versatile, but also Arthur, you've mentioned in the past too. Like it's outlasted like almost every social media platform at this point.
Certainly that it's been on. I mean, yeah, it started on MySpace. It outlasted MySpace, and at the same time that it was like being at the same
I didn't
time
know it was that old.
Oh yeah.
at the same time, it was super popular in 2015 on places like 4chan. It was simultaneously the Daily Dot reported it was the most popular meme on Tumblr as well. So, yeah, and now Tumblr feels kind of irrelevant. Pepe seems to have outlasted. Pepe has now moved to Twitch. Like it's jumped platforms more flexibly than almost any other character.
Well,
I think
Pepe didn't ban porn, so.
The Pepe porn, the scat Pepe porn, the poo poo pee pee Pepes will not a fan. Those are still on the hard drive somewhere though.
Okay, it's in your collection.
It is in the collection. It's just accumulating dankness on a hard drive somewhere.
Oh boy.
I'm sure it'll outlast us all. It'll be like on a flickering hard drive in a landfill after all of humanity is gone. I think Pepe feels innately nostalgic. I think there's something about Pepe that feels as though it's like a discarded toy. It feels like it's a Muppet. It feels like it's from the Never-Ending Story.
Yeah.
There's something about it that is authentically off-putting. When you first see, if you can kind of go back to the first moment you saw Pepe, there's something about it that is cute and creepy, and you're like, what is that? And I think it's also like, it's fun to draw, but in kind of a unique way. And I'm saying this as someone now that has drawn Pepe thousands and thousands of times, making the film, animating Pepe in the film. It's actually kind of hard to get Pepe right. It kind of takes a few different runs to get, like, you have to kind of like draw him a couple times to get it right. And I think like having to draw him several times is what kind of like makes him a remixable meme. And then I think just the whole rare Pepe joke created this thing where thousands and thousands of Pepes were getting made, and those continue to just proliferate. So I don't know. I think it's now just like part of internet history. Like sad Pepe is just he's
very
internet
much
ennui. Yeah,
it's biblical.
My roommate actually has a question.
Oh yes,
he's wondering what your favorite variations of Pepe are.
You know, there's someone on Twitch that I've been talking to on Twitter who's a 3D animator who did the most beautiful short film of Peepo, I guess, which is like the sort of Twitch version of, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of more like dumpy, like fat kid in the candy store version of Pepe, but it is. And there's this one little animated GIF they made of him on a little scooter scooting off to go get nugs. So it is. But that short he made is gorgeous, and we would really like to figure out a way to work with him in a real way.
Yeah, there was a computer animation of the death of Pepe that didn't make it into the film, and it didn't make it into the film because it had like too much stage presence. But it's this like kind of amazing computer animation of all of these animals coming out of the forest, and there's like a wolf and a snake, and they're all coming out of like a forest, and they're in a clearing, and there's like an executioner who's chopping or trying to chop Pepe's head off, and it's all very like realistically rendered. And then the guy that's chopping off his head starts to like glitch, like the avatar starts to like glitch wildly, and then Pepe's head can't be cut off. And then it ends with this sort of like sad look of Pepe with like a head that is sort of partially severed, but just kind of looking at you. And I think that animation is brilliant. It's wild. And we tried to like fit it into the edit like 4 or 5 times. And then we just realized that it was just too intense. It was kind of like, it had just like its own particular feeling to it. And the death of Pepe needed to be a moment for Matt. And so that's kind of the way we went with it. But that meme is still hilarious. And I got obsessed with the guy. Like, I was like, who made this thing? And then I like, of course, went down the fucking rabbit hole with it. And the guy mostly makes like incredibly graphic, like demon erotica. It's basically like demons ejaculating at great force, like ripping apart their demon sex partners. And I was like, oh, okay, this is just all right, fine, okay.
I've gotten fan art from those types as well.
Oh my god!
But yeah, it was fucking fascinating. It was weird.
Speaking of, sorry.
No, you go ahead. Do it.
Speaking of Peepo, were either of you familiar with the Friend World subreddit?
Yeah.
That wasn't
Sure.
in your documentary, so I was just curious.
Well,
I
there's a
know.
bunch of stuff that wasn't in the documentary because we were just like, we're at a certain point, you're just like, well,
It's this.
you
know what it
can't
is?
shove everything in it. We can't go into Chatelet. We can't go into
It was
like, all this
well-paced.
stuff. Like,
Yeah. But it's also the
it's Matt's
culture of-
story. Yeah.
It's Matt's story, but it's also the culture, and we appreciate it. But because a lot of our audience are these people, but there's a kind of younger audience of documentary film viewers who come from actually the YouTube world of documentary filmmaking, which is really all about like just regurgitating like just exhaustive information, which is its own kind of fascinating thing. But it's like it's not the kind of film that we were trying to make. So often we'll get like, why didn't you talk about this or that or this? It's like, well,
and you also have to choose a
it's not a
moment.
Kimba documentary.
Exactly.
It's also like the film had to end at a certain point.
Exactly.
And so,
Yeah.
and it's also like Pepe has moved on to obviously different sets of names and stuff like that. We didn't want to necessarily go into all the different like versions and derivations of
that's for
Pepe.
DVD
Crash
extras.
course.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, sure, we researched Apu and Groiper and all those things in a certain way, like this stuff just isn't appealing. So
There's
it didn't make it in.
There's someone here, I just want to nip this in the bud because this also comes up from time to time. Someone says like Matt just used the ADL's very powerful and expensive lawyers to bully people. So just to be very clear here, the ADL kind of, I wouldn't say ruined Matt's life, but they did not like talk to Matt before they didn't even know Matt existed before they put Pepe on the hate symbols database. That was thrust upon Matt by the ADL, and it was quite a surprise to him. So it's kind of the furthest thing from the truth. And also the lawyers that are helping Matt in our film have nothing to do with the ADL. And it was actually only until those lawyers came to his defense for free to help him that he was actually able to exercise his copyright. And to call Matt a bully in the face of making a copyright claim against a multi-millionaire propagandist who is Alex Jones is the most disingenuous retelling of that story that you could possibly imagine. Matt is literally a struggling artist with no support who thankfully had some really sweet, very talented lawyers with influence come and help him exercise his copyright, exercise his right as an artist to defend his artwork from being used in ways that he did not want and which he was not being paid to do or being paid for. So like, sorry, dude. No.
Yeah.
I mean, like in the same sense, like Alex Jones couldn't be selling shirts with Mickey Mouse on it, right?
Exactly. So, period. That's it.
Like
that's
no one would bat an eye if Disney had some sort of,
and they would give that argument credibility in a way where they wouldn't for Pepe.
Yeah. It's like people are still trying to differentiate and understand the rules of the internet versus like what we're already accustomed to, right? Especially when it comes to media. And so when you see Pepe as just like, oh, internet meme,
right.
People categorize it differently in their brains than a pre-existing character like Mickey Mouse or Homer Simpson.
Right, because the internet is like this contextless sort of soup, and people just come across things as if they were kind of invented out of the ether, because in a lot of sense, that is what the internet is. But
well, and there have been like Matt Groening is totally fine with all the versions of Bart, but he's a multi-millionaire. Like there's a part of him that knows that like ultimately he has an avenue to make money from the popularity of Bart Simpson at all times, and so he doesn't care if you're making Rasta Bart or not because
he's making bank.
He's making so much. The pennies he would theoretically make off Rasta Bart, he wouldn't even notice flying into his account.
Yeah.
So I forget where you mentioned this. It might have been over Twitter. There's a Blu-ray in the works. Is that what I heard?
Yeah. Well, it's in the very early stages, but yeah, we have plans to put it out before the end of the year. With some hot extras, some deleted scenes,
nice.
Definitely some commentary from us. So if you're already sick of hearing us, you'll get to hear more of it. But we'll probably have some other special guests.
Yeah,
on that
we'll
too.
Probably have like Matt and Skinner and some other people do some fun stuff.
With Blu-ray distribution, what I'm curious about is, so if you retain the rights to it and you're self-distributing, does that mean that you just have the option to just make it region free? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So anyone could buy that.
Great.
I believe.
Awesome.
I don't know. In fact,
Good
I don't even
news.
know how that would
We're
work.
we're still kind of working out the particulars of that, but yeah,
Okay.
our goal is for, I mean, yeah, we want to make it feel cool and special, and we're excited that people are asking about it. Absolutely.
There's only 3
and we
regions
do have,
for
yeah,
Blu-ray.
and we do have, like, I have to say, like, you know, the movie's 90 minutes long. We could have made a 2-hour film that had some other like wild shit in it. So,
which we'll try to. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it should
which
be
would be
available
f-
everywhere because we don't have like a worldwide deal. So I'm just actually trying to think about this because I've never been asked that question. But we could make a PAL version because, like, you know, there are territories in Europe that we don't have distribution, so there ostensibly are markets to sell to. So yeah, I think.
I mean, if you just have a region-free Blu-ray, it should be able to play in, because like PAL is like a DVD thing,
Yeah.
right? It's not really a
maybe.
Blu-ray thing.
I'm not an expert to
Like,
be quite honest. So.
Yeah, as long as you're A, B, and C.
Ask us in 2 weeks once we've done all of our research. That's pretty much the way this works.
Basically,
it's like,
yeah.
we have to go to DVD college tomorrow,
Yeah.
and we'll figure it out. We'll report
Yeah,
back to
the Blu-ray region restrictions have just been complete bullshit. With every new generation of physical media, they've had less and less of them, basically admitting that they didn't really serve a purpose in the first place. So all 4K Blu-rays, no matter where you buy them from, they're completely region-free. Or
That's
4K Blu-rays specifically.
So do you
like
still buy
UHD.
a lot of Blu-rays, Adam? Like
Why, yes, I do. This is my
Nice.
Blu-ray shelf. If you can't tell behind the drink cans.
Do you watch
and bottles.
movies over and over again?
Yes, I do.
You?
I do watch movies more than once.
This is his profession.
Well,
You got to.
it's the same reason why you would buy like a vinyl. You know, it's like ideal quality. It's not like compressed, and you get to feel like you own something. You know, you get the art, something you can hold in your hand. It's like a little collector's item. Sometimes there are cool things that come with it. Yeah, I like physical media, even if it's dying out. Still like it. I'll be one of the people that supports it.
No,
I wish
think that's
Criterion
great.
would adopt UHDs, but we'll see when that happens.
Well, there's just something nice about holding something physical, right? I mean, it's like especially as everything becomes more virtual and digitized, it's like there's almost this anxiety that comes from not having. I don't know. It's like in a weird way, people are like rebuying the old, kind of hot rodded, what's it called? iPods. I forgot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The last era of like the 164 gigabyte podcast. I mean, I can't even remember the names of these things, and they were like 2 years ago. iPod.
Yeah, it is.
Zune.
Oh yeah, Giorgio has a Zune.
I have a Zune. Yeah, not only can you still play them when the internet's out, but it's like technically even if you have something that you purchased on iTunes, you don't technically own it if you read the fine print. You own a license to view it.
Yeah.
And they can take away that at any point in time. And there's been documented cases where iTunes would decide, okay, this isn't on the store anymore, and then it gets removed from somebody's library even though they've already purchased it. And with Netflix, it's literally just like, okay, this library, unless Netflix owns the rights to the entire property, the library is constantly changing. So, yeah,
I do remember,
I like having the Blu-ray.
I do remember, like, as a kid buying records, and frequently I would like buy a record because I'd read about a review of it, or I'd like the cover, and then I would get it home and be like, oh man, I hate this. But then you felt as though you'd spent money on it. So you're like, well, I'm going to at least give it a try. And then the 4th or 5th time you listen to it, you're like, oh, this is incredible. And I feel like sometimes you have to kind of work to find your taste. And sometimes when you're just like flipping through things, scrolling through things, you don't kind of put the same focus on it. So I do miss that.
Sorry, somebody just linked to the Know Your Meme page for Smug Frog.
All right.
Which is another version of Pepe, but I'm just shocked that it's called Smug Frog and not just Pepe.
That's interesting. I never realized that.
We
did interview
the weaponized
those guys.
Pepe.
You might just see them on the DVD extras. I don't know.
Yeah, we spent a day in the Know Your Meme office.
Can you include stickers and stencils of Pepe on the Blu-ray?
Oh yeah, we're gonna be expanding the whole official Pepe store, and really exploit this copyright. Really sell to the masses. We're making
marketing.
Merch.
Yeah, huge TMs everywhere.
No,
Yeah.
no, but we'll have some fun stuff because that has actually been really reward. For Matt, there's like a kind of PTSD associated with it in some sense, and so it's been really interesting to see people reach out to him to be like, I earnestly want to wear an official Pepe shirt on my body that
Yeah.
has nothing to do with any of the
Yeah.
bad shit.
I guess that's like the difficult part about it because like I feel like the same, I guess, amount of people that would have known about Pepe before it was in the news as like alt-right sort of thing. I think that there's like a good healthy amount of people that are well versed in the internet that do not see it as a hate symbol at this point,
totally.
for sure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like how reasonable and how likely is it to get it taken off the ADL's hate symbol registry or whatever that is?
Probably not soon, but at some point,
It would be
I
it would
think
be
it's
awesome.
I mean, they've always left that door open, and
Have there been other instances where like
No,
symbols have gotten removed, or?
Well,
they've
Pepe is the only copywritten symbol on there, right? Like that's always been.
Oh, I guess so. Yeah. Wow.
I think, I don't know. Who knows how it ended up there? I think there was just, it was a very tumultuous moment in the election. And I think people on the left were trying to figure out a way to sort of make a very digestible, easy to understand explanation of what was happening on the right.
Yeah,
it was definitely a Clinton campaign kind of, like let's use this as a way because Trump's now used it to, have our say in the election and be like, okay, well, this is a hate symbol now, and Trump's using it. Therefore, it's kind of like a political game, politically motivated. But yeah, they totally did not realize what they were doing when they did that. And I doubt the Clinton campaign even realized it was a copyrighted
100%.
image.
I have no idea. Yeah. I'm trying to get to the bottom of that and talk to some people within the deep Hillary state, slowly making my way up the ranks of people there.
Yeah. It's funny that you say on the left. I don't even really consider the Democratic Party in the U.S. to be on the left as a person from Canada.
No, of course. I don't know how. Yeah, it's a very simplistic way. It's actually really funny if you watch this Social Dilemma movie on Netflix, they have to there's this whole thread within the film of a kind of scripted part that's serving. It's sort of, I guess, in a way, the same way that we're using our animations and Feels Good Man. They're these kinds of reprieves or a C story that's playing out in a scripted world about a little suburban family, and the son gets radicalized by something like the militant center or something like that.
Oh, yeah?
I just thought was the most absurd categorization, because it's ironically actually what the problem is that centrists are just incapable of calling out where the problems are. Anyway, that's a whole other story, but irony abound. Anyway, silent lull.
Got chat questions. We've got no plan or format for this whole live stream. We've just been shooting the shit. So if you want to ask questions, we are just chatting as per the category on Twitch that I listed this under.
Did you guys found Adam because of Feels Good Man review? P.S. I love the trailer. Adam is just a meanie. We are totally open.
I'm a tough critic.
I will say, look, just in general, I have to say, criticism as a concept in the age of the internet has gotten such a bad rap, and this term about a hater, anyone who formulates a well thought opinion about a thing just becomes a hater. As an artist, the relationship between artists and actual critics is actually really important, and a good faith critic like Adam is a very important part. I not just blowing smoke up your skirt. It's an important part of the medium of filmmaking or any art that you're in. You have to have these conversations, because if you're going to push the boundaries of whatever medium you're working in forward, you have to have these kind of arbiters that understand the medium in a way that the general consumer doesn't really fully understand, in order to kind of place your own work within the greater context. And that's the way that great art gets made, really.
I also have to say, I've been at first I hated reading Feels Good Man reviews. I was of the two of us, like I'm probably a little bit more like sensitive and offline than Giorgio. And I was like, I don't want to read all this shit. I don't want it to inform me. But I've gone back now and read a lot of reviews, good and bad. And there is always something that forces me to kind of think about Feels Good Man in a way that I didn't while we were making it. And I think it's actually helped me reflect on the experience in a better way. But we found your review specifically because Jenna Caravello, who was one of the animators on the film, texted it to me. And she's a huge fan of your channel. Yeah. And so, and so she texted it to me and was like, oh shit, Adam likes it. I was like, I don't know who Adam is. And she's like, no, he's the guy. If there's a guy to like the movie, this is the guy. And I was like, all right, Jenna, calm down. But then I watched it and I was like, oh, this is a really thoughtful review. Certainly you calling out Lawrence was something where I was like, oh, that's cool. You noticed how the attention to detail in the film, which we appreciated.
But
so,
also
funny, you're a funny guy. So
yeah, but also in the medium of criticism, art criticism, you too are pushing the medium of criticism forward to meet the era in a way that's like.
Is that why you like the Charlie Kaufman movie? Because of like the Pauline Kael thing in the car? Because
you're just gonna have to wait and watch my fucking analysis coming out this week. You're gonna we would have to go on a completely different tangent for me to explain everything about that movie.
I think you should, Adam. I think you should get your own Siskel or your own Ebert. I feel like you're really ripe for a.
That is true.
I mean, I have a podcast where I talk to two other YouTube movie talkers.
Well, there you go.
Called Sardonicast. We're all very sardonic. So that's the name of the podcast.
But you need a straight man and the non-straight. What is the other version of straight man? What the straight man and the? Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to start. I'm gonna subscribe. I'm gonna.
Thank you.
Smash that subscribe button. Yeah. I didn't realize.
Smash the like button too. There we go. Fanboy's got a link. Fanboy always very attentive with the links. Thank you.
Perfect.
Is Fanboy always in the chat, like every chat?
Yeah, one of my mods. He's a good boy. Edits some videos on my gaming channel.
So, so I was going to ask. So are you normally Twitch streaming gaming stuff?
I would say the majority of my streams are editing streams. I stream video games once a week, like scheduled, and then recently I've been doing some like Fall Guys in the last couple hours of my day, just being like, fuck it, I'm done working for today. I'm gonna play some Fall Guys and just streaming that anyway. I've been sorry, go for it.
I was gonna say, are you very excited or not excited or don't care about the new Sony PlayStation drop?
I don't give a shit about pre-ordering. I think that the new generation of consoles is not going to be really noticeably different from the previous one. I think the only real reason to buy one is for exclusives, which means that I'll inevitably wind up buying one anyway, because if I want to play the games, I have to get the console. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they're overstaying their welcome. Technology is, increasing to such a degree. So you had consoles lasting for an average of 6 years per generation, right?
Yeah.
So like Nintendo, Xbox 360. And eventually, with this last generation of console manufacturing, because the hardware has been growing at an exponential rate in terms of capability, you'll notice that this last generation of console wasn't just one console, it was two for all the major players except Nintendo, who's doing their own thing. So Sony didn't just have a PS4. They had a PS4, and then halfway through they had a PS4 Pro. Xbox One, they had an Xbox One and then an Xbox One X, where they basically made a new console, but they were like, oh, we'll just have like the same user interface, and we won't call it a new console, all to trick people into thinking that like that it's still the same console, even though it isn't. So we've already surpassed the whole 6-year period. So PS5 and the Xbox, whatever the new one's called, like, yeah, it's the new console, but in like 2 or 3 years, they're going to have like this like halfway point, like 0.5 period, where they completely up the hardware and are like, oh, it's not a new console, to try and trick people into thinking that like consoles aren't just inevitably behind in terms of like what you can do capability wise. With a PC, you can just upgrade your video card or something, right? So
is that normally how you play on PC?
If a game is on PC, I'll play it on PC, but not every game's on PC.
Okay, all right. I'm trying to get. I'm thinking about dabbling back in.
Since I have a Twitch stream and a gaming channel and all that, I can justify buying a console because it's a tax write-off. So
here's a little fun piece of trivia. I am the voice of 2 different characters in Red Dead Redemption.
Oh,
on my IMDb. So Red Dead Redemption 1. So go out there and find a drunk person on the side of the road and shoot them. That's me.
Well, I like the first one better. Maybe that's why.
Oh, there you go. We worked on the score with my old music, the same musical partner that co-wrote the closing track song with Sharon Van Etten, Feels Good Man. We worked on the score for Red Dead Redemption.
Mm-hmm. So, how much of what you covered in the documentary was a learning experience, and how much were you aware of before you decided to make it? So I think you told me previously that neither of you were really like, you didn't like browse 4chan or anything. You kind of just like, I mean, so your connection to the documentary was about just the frog.
Yeah, I mean, I was a fan of Boys Club from the early days of Boys Club. I think I bought issue 2, and yeah, I'm not someone who's extremely online. I'm a little older than like the 4chan generation, like the first generation of 4chan. I'd heard of 4chan because my pal Woody had sold psychotropic video loops on 4chan, where he would claim that he would sell these hour-long MP4s with like a repetitive beat, and he would claim if you stared at this video loop long enough, it would actually kind of give you a certain kind of like psychedelic experience. And he made like I think he made something like $1,800 or something. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? None of that makes any sense to me. And he's like, yeah, I've been selling it on 4chan. And I was like, oh, okay. I never heard of 4chan before. And that was like and he was on 4chan kind of during like the Occupy era. Like he was an Occupy Wall Street guy. And that was the first time I'd heard of it, but I never went on it. And so, yeah, the first time that I went on 4chan was once we decided to start making the film. And then that's when I started going on 4chan. I spent several months lurking on 4chan and the various archives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was just a research project for me. And I didn't really care about all the soap opera of 4chan. I just really wanted to understand like what 4chan meant to people.
Yeah.
The biggest learning curve, or not learning curve, but the biggest like I don't know, my favorite discovery of the film really was understanding the moment, actually. Like to really understand the mechanics of that was actually I kind of understood it.
That's
right?
Awesome.
It's like this moment where you have your little boys club up in your tree house or
no
whatever.
pun intended.
Exactly. Oh yeah, I'm just doing this by accident. But yeah, like you have like the girls come and invade the tree fort, and you have to like defend it. I mean, it's as silly as that. So it's really insane that really metastasized into something.
Right, but it was an anger that was going on throughout national politics in America during that moment. Like there was what was happening on 4chan was happening on AM radio. It was just kind of like.
Well, I got pumped through the culture wars type thing, and Gamergate definitely helped amplify that in a way.
Well, yeah. So like I completely understand that, and part of the reason I used to browse 4chan a lot before Reddit, and now Reddit is it offers the exact same thing, a better experience for me, honestly. But back in the day, like I'm not sure how many people know this, but those like really old that are now completely seen as complete cringe, Rage comics. So the you know exactly what I'm talking about. Black and white. Yep. Those originated on 4chan before they got out to normies. They were all over 4chan. A lot of them were super funny, like Forever Alone or like whatever, every variation of it that originated on 4chan. And I was there during the time when all of a sudden, like, these rage comics were now, like a meme gets ruined because people are on Facebook are now using it, essentially. And so there was this other website called 9gag where they would just republish all of these different memes from 4chan. So right now you see like the majority of websites just republishing from Reddit. At the time, it was just 4chan would originate these memes, and then 9gag would provide this like much younger demographic, much more sanitized version where they'd lifted all these different memes from 4chan. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, like a bunch of kids and a bunch of people that don't understand the heart of the meme are using it. They're using the meme incorrectly. It was like, I got it. I got the frustration. Where it's like you have something nice. And even on Reddit, like every single subreddit that gets over a certain amount of people using it just turns to shit. And you get these alternate versions of these subreddits where it's like, okay, now this is something where the posts are actually good. Where if it gets above like 1 million people viewing it, it's like, this isn't related to the subreddit and it's getting upvoted anyway because it's cute or something, right? It's just when there's too many people in the same pot doing this thing, it lessens the quality of it.
Well, and that even seemed to be like a lament of Chris Poole early on. Like there's like an old video of like him talking at RaffleCon where he's like, he's lamenting that like even like his mom could grok a vice dog. And, there was this feeling that the fun from 4chan was over even then, like in 2008 or 2000.
Advice animals also originated on 4chan. They were very popular before.
Yeah,
those
all
got
this
ruined.
kind of cultural stuff, And so, there were edits of the film where we really kind of enumerated that a little bit more, and then we just decided to shoot past it. There's like a little moment you see like Pepe swimming through Rick rolling and all this sort of stuff, and that was just like a clever device that I tried to put together to like shove 2 sections of the film together fast. We wanted the film to be able to turn really tight corners, so so we kind of like tipped the hat to some of that stuff, but we didn't go too deeply into it.
Were you into E-Bombs World? Because when I was in college,
when I was much younger, I must have been like
Whistle Tips
12 or something. Maybe like 13. But like, the further back you go into like internet culture and internet media, the less options that there were for like a good curated experience of what you wanted. So E-Bombs World was like pre-YouTube. YouTube was like the first generation of like everyone's content. Whereas like E-Bombs World, they had submissions. Either they directly stole it from something that was already popular and then just decided to run ads on it because the guy that ran the website was a piece of shit, or you would submit your video if you wanted it to get past the curators, and so whether it was on the website consensually or not, there was still this gatekeeping of what was allowed on the website. And then eventually, that how
you moved to 4chan from E-Bombs, or were you like on Rotten or something awful? Or
something I wouldn't say I ever moved to 4chan. I would say 4chan was its own like unique experience. If 4chan was like E-Bombs World was majorly like video content, sort of like, oh, what's some new funny like video thing? Whereas like 4chan was everything. In the same way, the reason why Reddit replaced 4chan for me is because the experience that I was really looking for was more or less just being like the front page of the internet. Like, what's new? What's happening right now? What can I find out that's hot that I don't have to find out about in 2 weeks from now when everybody else knows about it anyway? And I enjoy edgy jokes and stuff like that. 4chan offered those, and I mean, like, depending on the subreddits that you subscribe to, if you curate your own experience on Reddit, it's not like completely sanitized.
No, for sure.
So yeah, like there's like porn on Reddit anyway.
What?
There's porn on Reddit?
I never knew this.
There's a lot of weird porn on Reddit. A lot of atypical porn. There's a community for everything.
I'm trying to get Alexis Ohanian to watch the film, so If
Oh, yeah?
If you all want to help us in this endeavor, just at him with some sort of tweet that says, "Please watch Feels Good."
For that, I'm gonna get a
They have a
little
Twitter?
wine. I'll be right back.
Perfect. Do they have a Twitter? Alexis.
Yeah, Alexis Ohanian definitely does.
All right. Oh, I guess they're verified. Unlike me. Twitter has this weird apprehension towards online creators. Like if you're not behind like a publicist, if you're not behind like a media company, they don't want to verify you.
But I think they just like they kind of put a halt to the whole thing. I think now to get verified is next to impossible, right?
I see it happening to people. People are still being verified, but you can't request it anymore, I guess.
What's really unnerving is that there's this whole era of people who were verified from like the early days of Twitter, where if you just like got a following through whatever means, they would be like, "Oh yeah, you're verified now." And so there's these people who like parlayed their verification into the little cottage industry of bullshit.
Yeah, there was a point where you could apply for it, and I almost did, but then it asked for like my address and like personal information. I'm like, I'm not giving that to Twitter.
Oh,
it asked for like a picture of my ID.
Oh yeah.
Like, no.
Instagram
I think that skepticism is warranted.
Yeah.
But to go back to original question, what are some of your favorite docs outside of? Just because I don't know anything about Reddit or video gaming, I'm just trying to. Like,
are you talking specifically
I have nothing to say about either one.
Are you asking me? What are my?
I am asking you. So you said
I said The Act of Killing is one of my favorite documentaries. Dear Zachary is really great. There's some really great. Honestly, like I do my top 10 lists every year, and I would say like probably, I don't know, like at least 25 to 40% are documentaries. Like there's always a crap ton of documentaries on my favorite films of the year list. As for the ones that like really break out, I would say those two that I just mentioned, Bowling for Columbine is really, like super classic, impactful.
I want to rewatch that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should rewatch. I kind of stopped.
Exit Through the Gift Shop.
Also,
yeah, that's one that I definitely, when we first started working on Feels Good Man, I watched it 2 times thinking about the film, but then it has a narrator, and then I was like, we're not going to have a narrator in Feels Good Man, so it was something where I kind of decided to stop thinking about it structurally. I love Cartel Land. That's one that
that was a really good one.
Nothing to do with Feels Good Man, but I love that film. I think it's one of the better films of the last.
Somebody mentioned Tower in chat. That was really great.
Oh, I've not seen Tower.
What's that one? Either.
Tickled. Yeah, Tickled is awesome.
I like actually the addendum to Tickle King, the 20-minute extra after.
Yep.
I found to be much better.
The director.
I mean, it's fast. Well, it's just like there's just more conflict. It's wild.
I guess so. Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah, it's one of those things that like if you're making a documentary if you're making a documentary on a subject that's like currently taking place, it's like you have that conflict where it's like, are we at the end? Or should we keep waiting until things happen in real life to make a proper end to the film, right? So that's one of those where it's like, oh, more things happen directly after the movie was made, so I guess you got to release a short.
It's true. Though in the vein of Tickled, like, I mean, I love all those Louis Theroux
those are so
docs from those BBC docs of like
Most Hated Family in America.
Those, like when I first saw all of those, like I think I probably saw clips of those on E-Bombs World at some point, but all the like Weird Weekends or the Wild America ones.
Yeah. Meme Boy Advanced mentioned one that I can't believe I forgot to mention. Koyani Scotzi.
Of course.
Yeah. That was like one of the few films where it's like on a first watch I'm like 10 out of 10. Yeah. No doubt in my mind. Like it was such a visceral experience.
Did you ever to that kind of that style of documentary, did you ever see Manufactured Landscapes?
Oh yeah. I did. Not many people know about that one. I saw that one a long time
I don't know
ago.
that film.
I wouldn't call that, I mean, I would call it the same style in the sense that there's like no dialogue, but
it's hypervisual and repetitive.
It doesn't have, what it's missing is like the amazing soundtrack though.
That's
like
true.
I like and even from the visual aspect, like I like it, but it's still not as like great looking as something like Koyani Scotzi.
One of the best short documentaries I've ever seen in my life was I was kind of obscure, but when I was still practicing architecture, I did an installation at the Venice Architecture Biennial in 2012, and there was each country has its own pavilion where they get to kind of curate.
I like Crumb in the chat. Crumb's a favorite.
Oh, crumbs are a good one.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that one yet.
I forget which country it was Slovenia or something like that. They did this short film that was about, it's called The Column. And to my knowledge, you can't actually see it anywhere. And it's a real shame because it's a masterpiece of filmmaking, but it's about this. There's no talking at all. It just opens in this giant mining scene in somewhere in China. And there's like 5 guys that are just cutting this giant piece of rock off of this cliffside. And it's like the soundtrack, I mean, like the sound edit is incredible. And then they take this giant hunk of stone and they put it into the belly of this giant ship. And they just like, almost like, I don't know how you describe it, but the 5 of these guys just kind of like stare at this giant block of rock for day after day, and they start like slowly chipping away at it with tiny little hammers and nails until they just kind of whittle it into the most beautiful, refined piece of stone column. But it's like, highly recommend it. Sorry, but
I like those. I like process docs, like process shorts. Like those.
But you don't know what they're doing.
Even like in Sesame Street, like where you would see like the molten stuff.
It's all taking place in in the belly of this huge ship liner, and so of course it's like this whole treatment about globalization or whatever. But like you don't know what they're actually building or like why they've taken this big hunk of rock. Anyway, it's a gorgeous piece of film.
There was a film that I saw at True False a couple years ago where what's the name of it? But it's basically the entire film. It's a documentary, and the entire film takes place within a pigeon blind, and you don't realize that they're hunting pigeons for about the first hour.
Oh,
it's like these French guys quietly moving through this like these canvas tunnels, and it's weird because they'll take other pigeons that aren't squab, they'll put like little hoods in them and release those to attract it's a fascinating film, but you're confused almost the entire time, and I can't remember the name of it. If you've never been to True False, Adam, you should try to go one year.
Where is that?
Fun. It's in Columbia, Missouri.
Oh man, you would have a blast there.
Yeah, just because it's like it's just the best film festival. It's like there's no industry there. All the filmmakers, if your film is,
it's all just exclusively documentary. Yep,
it's exclusively documentary, and if it gets in, there has to be a member of the film team there. The Q&As are all like amazing Q&As. It's in a college town that everyone in the college town just like shows out for it. It's really like great. It's like, and the film festival has kind of revitalized this downtown, and it's just like, it's a really special, great experience. That's totally worth like getting a pass and, going for the 3 or 4 days. And it plays like, it's a nice mix because it plays some of the stuff that you would maybe have seen at Sundance, and then stuff that's world cinema you really don't have a chance to ever see again. Like I saw this amazing film about like Chinese folk artists, this guy who has like this painting school in the in like this mountain region, and he teaches painting to all of the women who spend the days working in the fields. And very little dialogue, beautifully shot, funded by the Chinese government. It's called Up the Mountain. It's a great film, but I don't know where else you'd see it, you know?
It's funny. People are naming their favorite documentaries, and a lot of them are actually documentaries that our editor, Aaron Wickenden, cut. So
yeah, I was going to say, what have they mentioned? Hail Satan?
Best of Enemies, Hail Satan.
Yep, he cut those.
Nice.
He cut Phil. That is the thing. In documentaries, the editor is the king. Like there's a reason, like if you see like, for instance, the Free Solo, when they won the Oscar, they didn't thank their editors. Those people are motherfuckers. Like you have to thank your like, I mean,
the music also wasn't great in that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like the Keith Urban song at the end. But yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating thing to watch him climb that, but
oh yeah. Yeah, if they just had a better composer, I would have liked it so. I still like the movie, but
yeah,
man, the music was just holding it back so much. Did not complement the visual. They got the same composer from like every like really like World War Z, and like just a really generic Like kind of like
Epic.
yeah, there's technically music here. You're playing by the books, but the visuals of that film deserved so much more, in my opinion.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Um, something that I there was a film that
about
was
Errol Morris if you want to.
there's a film that I would call similar to Manufactured Landscapes, although in presentation. Have you ever seen Our Daily Bread from 2005?
No.
It's a German no dialogue film documentary, basically about like food production. And so like the contrasting images, and it's all really well shot. I haven't seen it in a long time, but like contrasting images of like people on machines like plucking fruits in like a greenhouse, and then next scene you're seeing like a cow getting a C-section. And so like some of the stuff is like weirdly disturbing, but since there's no narration, since it's not like Earthlings with Joaquin Phoenix, like you can't really criticize it in that way of being like, oh, you're just trying to like make me a vegan. It's like, well, this is just matter of fact. This is like how our food is made, sort of thing.
Right.
It's really interesting.
Baraka has that radical vegan scene.
Oh
too.
yeah.
I also love To Be and To Have. Have you ever seen To Be and To Have?
No. To Be and To Have.
It's about a one room. It's about the last year in a one room schoolhouse in this like little French community, and
it's on my watch list.
This very patient teacher dealing with his remaining students, and it's a perfect verite doc. It's just perfect, lovely, completely human. Yeah.
Wow.
Huh. Yep. There's a lot of good documentaries out there.
And there's a lot of good documentaries being made. This year, The Mole Agent, people should rent The Mole Agent. That's really fun film.
Is it available to rent right now?
Yeah, it's available to rent right now. That's good. Watch out for David Osett's Mayor. Mayor is a total amazing film.
You want to describe that one a little bit? Because it's got a pretty incredible setup.
Yeah, Mayor is a film made by one guy. He shot it, he edited it, it's just a one-man band. It's an incredible film. It's about the mayor of Ramallah. And it does the thing that great documentaries do, where, I think I had like I thought I had like a certain sense of what it was like to perhaps live in Palestine as like someone who reads the news. And but this film is about Ramallah, and the opening scene. I also say I've seen many edits of it. I don't know if it's still the opening scene, but the opening scene is of a bunch of Santa Clauses rappelling down the side of an office building to like dubstep Christmas music, and you're in Palestine. And it's a very cosmopolitan city, and the mayor is this funny weirdo who, if you look up the mayor, actually his backstory was he spent 10 years in prison as a political dissident, but the film doesn't even get into that. You don't even know that he'd been a prisoner. All you see him as being like a really like benevolent leader, and the people who work underneath him have such like respect for him. And there's this scene where it's like they have to kind of take care of him because something happens with the Israeli occupiers, and you can see like, oh, real leadership, people care about it. I watched it right after that moment when like Trump walked up Air Force One and he had toilet paper on the back of his shoe, and no one in his cabinet was like, hey, fucking idiot, you have toilet paper on your shoe. And you realize like, oh, there's a compassion to power. And David did just like an amazing, he just did an amazing job on that film. And he brought in David Teague to help him edit it at the end, who did Cutie and the Boxer. But I think Mayer is very special. And if you're like someone who's thinking about making doc, it's also a fun thing to watch, because he bought a camera. He went there on a whim. He just made it all by himself. It's a wild film.
It's funny how desensitized we become to those moments at this point, because like with other presidencies or other political figures, like something like, oh yeah, toilet paper on the shoe.
It'll be out
soon. Like that might be something like that would still be talked about, but there's just such a oversaturated amount of these moments with Trump that it's like, okay, nothing's surprising anymore. It doesn't even really get news coverage because it's just like, okay, this is just expected at this point.
It's exhausting. Yeah, that's part of the strategy. Flood the zone with shit.
Somebody, I like the 7-Up series. Those are great.
Yeah, I was about to mention that right now. Did you see 63 Up?
I've not. I don't remember the last time I checked in. Neil was no longer kind of homeless. He'd kind of stabilized. I think that was, but that might have been like 42 even. I don't know if I've seen 63.
Yeah. 63, I haven't seen all of them, but I think I've seen 3 or 4 of them. 63 was my favorite because it felt like the most conclusive and I guess just like in terms of what the entire series is aiming for, it was the best film because it showed the greatest range of their lives. And when you're getting into issues like old age and death and like cancer and stuff, it's like, okay, well, this completely justifies the entire point of the series, right? I mean, like the series was good before then. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'll have to watch that. When I was
so
like
good.
younger, I remember like an art house cinema running like an entire day of those and sitting through those, and it tested my patience. And then by the end of the day, I was just like completely kind of blown away by what a monumental project it was.
Yeah. They released the entire collection. So I don't know if this means they'll be making another one or not, but they released the entire collection on Blu-ray. I forget where from, but it's like a European distribution thing, so you might need a region-free Blu-ray player. But it was only like $20. It was like super cheap for like all the movies. So obviously I got that. Yeah.
It's good. I feel like I should be buying more DVDs. I used to.
Blu-rays.
If you put a Blu-ray into a Blu-ray player and you put it on your TV, you'll be blown away by how good it looks. It's like it's kind of equalized now that like with the 4K TV and the streaming has gotten better, but there was a point at which like I still actually rent DVDs from Netflix. I'm like one of the 6 people who does it, although I still have the same 3
oh my God.
in my hopper for the last.
There's one lonely automaton working at the Netflix plant sending you these.
He's like, he ordered Major League again. We got to send it back to him.
You're just hanging on to that as a coaster for 6 years.
Exactly.
We've got a question from the goodest boy in chat, imaginary fanboy, asking, is there a documentary that we hate?
Oh, there's a lot.
I was going to say that's...
well,
Dinesh D'Souza docs.
Well, that's an easy one.
Too easy.
God, I'm trying to think of one I can talk about that I don't feel like I'll get some sort of.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to think about one that's kind of like I there are films that I think, like Dear Zachary is interesting. Like I don't like that film, but it works. Like it's an interesting.
You don't like the experience, or you don't like
no, I think it's a totally unique film. Like I think it's totally unique, and I like it for those reasons. But it's not like a film that I would say is like a favorite or that I would necessarily recommend.
Okay, I can.
But I'm trying to think about.
I can loop in a two for one question here. Someone asking about Errol Morris. We should talk about Errol Morris, or otherwise we are normies.
He's definitely people who I like some of them, and some of them I totally hate.
No, I love him, but like American Dharma, I had like a lot of issues with, not because, I think some people criticized him for just even the premise of like making a documentary about what's his fuck
Steve Bannon.
Steve Bannon. On its face, I don't like. Because the other doc about Steve Bannon I thought was actually pretty successful. I think the issue with the Steve Bannon doc with American Dharma was that Errol Morris is like so in love with his own kind of thinking that he didn't really have the perspective to understand that Steve Bannon loves his thinking even more and loves ego even more than Errol Morris, and was really just so tickled that like one of the best documentary filmmakers on the planet wanted to make a movie about him and just almost kind of used him in a way. And I was really surprised to see how little self-awareness there was in that, because you walk away from that being like, man, if I were Steve Bannon, I would be fucking psyched about this movie. Because
man, that's another example of like, where do you end it? Like now he's going to jail for fraud, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
like if he just waited 2 years.
Yeah.
I think there could have been a really beautiful film there, but I think he's just, I don't know, he didn't time the moment. And then he, and I saw him in person show the film at Alamo Drafthouse in LA.
Good theater.
Yeah, it's a great theater. They actually put out Feels Good Man in several screens across America. they've been hugely supportive. But in the Q&A, he was just so defensive, and he had like the exact same canned response that I had heard him say on NPR that morning to almost every single question. And he was getting so defensive about like cancel culture and all this stuff. And it's just like, Errol, man, like to what I was talking about earlier about the importance of like reading good criticism about your work. He just like was not hearing the criticism. It was just like, yeah, I'm being canceled and all this stuff. And it's like,
oh, weird.
come on, dude.
Some people lean really hard into that.
Yeah.
In ways that seem like 5 years too late.
Exactly.
Yeah. His movies, though, also have sort of defied, I think, criticism for years because his personality really kind of like overshadows his individual films.
Yeah.
He also is so important to like the marketplace of documentary that I think he's kind of like hands off a little bit. But yeah, I think he had a similar problem in Mr. Death. Like that film, I think has all sorts of really kind of like fucked up problems. And
have you ever seen that one, Adam?
No, I have not.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's a mess. It's a real mess.
It's definitely worth watching.
It's totally worth watching as like from a critical point of view. And I'm also curious to see now that I've made a like I remember watching that when I was young and thinking it was irresponsible. And I'm curious to watch it now again.
Mr. Death?
Now that I've
Yeah,
or is it Dr. Death? It's a guy who believes
it's Mr. Death.
He's a guy that's sort of been emotionally manipulated by neo-Nazis to become like the one scientist that will tell you that gas wasn't used at Auschwitz and therefore the Holocaust. And he's also having this guy like reenact moments, and you feel like this guy is been total. It does feel like a little usury, and gross sometimes, But then there's also movies like him. Like I didn't really like Wormwood, but I loved it because he just like was trying something totally different.
Yeah.
But I also felt like it was a total mess. Like how many different angles are you going to shoot this interview from? It's distracting me. How many episodes? This feels endless. Like, but I appreciated like his ambition because so many documentaries don't necessarily have like, a grandness. It doesn't have like a sense of ambition.
Yeah, I think more generally speaking, it's not that I hate I don't want to talk about specifically documentaries that I hate. What I hate about certain documentaries is the complete misunderstanding from the beginning that you are making a film. You're making a piece of film first, right? Like there's this assumption that you can just make a documentary film on a subject that people find interesting. And then you have a movie, but it's like, you're using the medium of film as an art form.
Yeah.
So
it's
like,
not just a book.
Yeah.
Right?
And to that end, I'll say The Staircase is a masterpiece, or at least the first original group of The Staircase is the masterpiece. I don't know about the new addendums, but yeah, I agree with Giorgio. And that was something we talked a lot about with Feels Good Man. You kind of want either the documentary to be like this perfect verite little like gift box, or you want it to have like some other, and to that end, like I hate Alex Gibney films. Like I hate what Alex Gibney, I hate what Alex Gibney has done to also the doc marketplace. It's like an assembly line. He's like the Henry Ford of doc.
Yeah, in a way, I guess.
And I mean, he's made some good films. Like he's made enough films that some of them are going to be good. Like I think Going Clear is a totally fine informational doc. But I think other docs that he's made are just like, he just puts it through the grist mill, and he has the ability to like, basically like, like the Elizabeth Smart documentary is a good example. That's a story, but he had the ability to basically buy that story, and then he's able to produce documentaries at a faster pace because he basically has an assembly line, and I don't think they're always good quality.
What about Werner Herzog? The best. Grizzly Man, the best.
Dark Glow of the Mountains.
I wouldn't even say like Grizzly Man's great. I love it, but like I've really loved the direction he's gone with his newer documentaries.
The Volcano one was amazing.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet, but I saw the newest one at TIFF. Fireball.
Okay.
No, it's Fireball, and I think the subtitle was like Visitors from a Darker World or something. And he made it with the same guy that he made the one that you just mentioned, the Volcano one with. But yeah, I love this direction of like really kind of like spiritual and like poetic documentary. Like his narration is always like very him, very amusing and like insightful in ways that like you wouldn't find from like a production company. You know,
No,
you
he's
wouldn't
such a
find
great
from
writer.
And
Yeah.
well, and it's also
Singular.
like he's still churning out these other like narrative films that sometimes aren't very good. But I mean, how rare is it to have a filmmaker that actually gets to kind of like age gracefully?
Yeah.
There's only a handful
Yeah.
of them. Like it's like Robert Altman, Werner Herzog. There's really only a two or three.
Yeah.
You should, if you can, I forget. I think it was on Fresh Air. He was on an interview on NPR earlier this year promoting some film, and they played for him an impersonation by oh fuck, what's the comedian's name?
Paul F. Tompkins.
Paul F. Tompkins' impersonation of
Giorgio
him.
is terrible with names.
It's so good. Yeah, that's my thing.
How many times during the day I have to like tell him a name?
Anyway,
Yeah.
Paul F. Tompkins does this incredible Werner Herzog impersonation, and it's gotten pretty legendary. And so the
That's awesome.
NPR interviewer is like, Mr. Herzog, have you ever heard this impersonation of you? He's like, no, I cannot say that I've heard this. And so he plays it for him, and it is just like could not be more perfect Herzog.
That's great.
The
sounds awesome.
the New Yorker article about him making Rescue Dawn is one of the funniest, most hilarious long form pieces about film I can think of. There's this funny moment where he stumbles across a car crash in the Hollywood Hills, and it's randomly Joaquin Phoenix. Like,
yeah, I heard about that.
It's like, and he
rescued Joaquin Phoenix.
You would be okay, and then he like walks. It's laugh out loud funny, and he had all these financiers that were basically trying to like turn Rescue Dawn into this like artless, Vietnam action film.
Yeah.
And
he got shot on camera.
Him sabotaging all of that stuff is really endearing. But yeah, Dark Glow of the Mountains, which is his it's a mountain climbing film, and it has this amazing if you look up Dark Glow of the Mountains on YouTube, there's this amazing sequence where a Sherpa gives Reinhold Messner a full body massage, and it's like maybe the guy has never given a massage before, but he's karate chopping the back of like Reinhold Messner's head so violently that he's giving like an interview, and his head is like shaking violently as this guy's karate chopping the back of his head. It is sublime. It is so funny and sublime.
Here's a question. So I guess in relevance to both documentaries and the early age of the internet, have you ever seen, and how do you feel about early internet self-distributed documentaries like Loose Change or Zeitgeist, that are these like conspiracy documentaries that gained a lot of traction in the early days of the internet?
Oh man, no, I was a very big Loose Change guy coming out. I try to put myself in like those shoes today, because 24, 25, I went to the University of Texas during the march to war in a very conservative time on campus with like all these young college Republicans, and it felt like you were going fucking crazy. And so like documentaries like Loose Change provided a kind of weird solace in a weird way, and so there is I can have some sort of self-reflection and understanding what it must be like to make sense of today's moment, and why like conspiracy theories have always historically existed is a way to make sense of the kind of senseless, right? And so, but that said, that you even at that early days of bless you, even those early days of YouTube, you kind of felt like, oh, this is kind of interesting, because it would constantly update the file, and it would be like Loose Change version 4, Loose Change version 5, and I don't know if that's it is certainly interesting. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing.
I was really into those.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't know them, Arthur?
Yeah, I kind of love how Hypernormalization had its own life on YouTube, and
Hypernormalization's a
kind
masterpiece.
of like, yeah, his movies are really fun.
Have you seen that one, Adam?
Hypernormalization. Let's see.
No, it's Adam Curtis. He's a BBC filmmaker.
Bitter Lake. Yeah,
Curtis.
they're archival films.
You would love it, man. It's long, but it's so fucking wild. It came out October 2016.
Oh, it's on my watch list. Yeah, I haven't seen it yet.
It's so good.
It's a fascinating film. That was one where Feels a Good Man has nothing like it, but that was for instance, our composers Ari and Ryan, they did a record on Bandcamp called Mood of the Era that was inspired by Hypernormalization, and that's why we picked them as our composers, because
Okay.
but that was inspired by the soundtrack on Hypernormalization.
Yeah, they're both on my watch list, but I haven't seen them.
Yeah, it's a great film. But
I-
yeah, I don't know those. I'm trying to think about early internet ones. I mean, they're not ones that were specifically distributed. There was a film called We Live in Public that when I was kind of doing my like internet watch films.
Yeah.
And the first time I watched it, I'd watched it on YouTube, and certain sections were silent because, you know, the licensed music had been pulled out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I watched it very critically. It has a lot of like bad stock footage I think it's from like maybe 2008 or something, but it feels like it's late 90s.
Yeah.
And it takes place in the late 90s. And a lot of bad stock footage, you know, simulations of the internet or whatever. And the first time I watched it, I was like, this is pretty corny. But then the second time I watched it, I was like, oh, this is such like an interesting time capsule of this moment in filmmaking. Yeah. And I have a feeling that film will actually continue to age in interesting ways, just because it's going to kind of this weird mix of like a film being made right at the moment of like DSLR and HD not quite being there yet. So it's super janky and digital, but then it's kind of from this 90s moment where they're probably ripping video from like real audio player. And, and I don't know, I would argue the film is a mess, but it's fascinating if you're into like a messy internet film.
I
I like
to pee very badly.
Films.
Yeah.
And I have to pee very badly. I have to go, but also I have to make dinner because my stomach is very hungry.
All right. Yeah, we can end this whenever. So.
Well, no. If Arthur, you want to keep going,
I mean, if people have genuine questions, or if people have seen Feels Good Man and have specific questions, like I'm down to answer stuff for a little while longer. Or Adam, if you have like specific, if you guys want to
Feels hungry, man. Exactly.
Get some questions in chat,
Adam,
because I'm also gonna pee again.
Okay.
So I'm gonna be all alone. I'm not even looking at chat. I just stopped.
Adam, I'll hit you up later. Thank you so much, Adam. I really
I'll hold it until.
No. You guys can pee, and I'll run. I can look at chat questions. People want to ask me.
Awesome. I'll be right back.
Sure.
Hold on.
Sorry, the chat is not refreshing for me. Oh, well, right now I'm really boring you now that I own Adam's stream. Why Pepe the Frog? I think it's pretty obvious at this point. Thanks. I can't wait for you to watch it. We worked on it really hard. I hope you like it. No, the future, I mean, we have things we're working on. This is a question about future projects, but you know, we're still taking out Feels Good Man. So if you live in America, if you live in the United States, this weekend we're doing a bunch of screenings with Q&As with fun moderators. If you go to feelsgoodman.watch, we're doing a Q&A with Tim Heidecker on Saturday night. We're doing one with the great Ira Glass on Sunday, and we're doing Ann Friedman, who has this great podcast called Call Your Girlfriend, is on Friday. So, I love Dat Boy. I think Dat Boy is hilarious. I also love all of those bad CGI those bad CGI GIFs that were kind of from that same, what was it? Like a little animation studio that Dat Boy came from. Those were all really funny. I love those. I am interested in making fictional works. I mean, my background before making Feels Good Man was I'd done a bunch of like, I had a bunch of development deals for animated sitcoms. Like I had development deals at Comedy Central and Cartoon Network and Fox Animation Studios. I basically spent 10 years not making anything, only doing development deals where I barely made any money. And so I kind of maybe thought I wasn't going to work in film anymore. And then Feels Good Man happened, and I became obsessed with the making of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was it's kind of a unique trajectory maybe. And George
my
Lucas
roommate has an unfortunate question.
Sure.
but I mean, it sounded like you had more to say, so I won't.
No. What's his unfortunate question? Who's your roommate in the chat?
It's Sickab. So we can all shame him for this. Do you know
Right
what
on.
bussy means?
No.
Okay, well, there's your answer, Sickab. I hope you're
I mean,
happy.
it's boy pussy, right?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah.
So you
So
lied.
yeah, I'm aware of the subtext of a lot of these questions.
It's like meme culture.
Yeah, meme culture, and if you've seen Feels Good Man, then maybe you have some questions.
I can hear him giggling in the other room.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
So we decided not to cover that stuff in Feels Good Man.
Oh, you didn't have a deleted scene about bussies?
No.
No. It's a very different world being a person that is not only just like self-distributing on the internet, but like being a part of like internet culture day in, day out.
You know, it's something that I mean, I was not the person that I'm not someone that I can only really look at the internet kind of through the lens of ethnography or something. It's not something that I've been a part of, but I mean, there was a part of me that I think we maybe talked about that in the Q&A that we'd done earlier, Adam, was, you know, like I had grown up like super conservative. Like I grew up like I was like really overweight. I didn't date anybody in high school. I was very conservative. My dad was like a really conservative person. I had a terrible attitude. I was filled with like self-loathing. And so even though like 4chan was like a place I'd never been to, I felt like I understood kind of 4chan because that's who I'd been as a teenager. I'd sort of been proto red pilled.
As somebody that was on 4chan, I don't know if I ever like when I was on it, I didn't really see it. And perhaps it might have been like because I was naive, or maybe I just didn't fully understand it. But I never really saw it as I experienced it to be anything conservative. Anything that I saw there, I just saw as like kind of like edgy, right?
Yeah.
And I guess like there's like kind of a weird line drawn between what is edgy and what is neo-Nazis being edgy to convince people to, you know, have their worldview sort of thing. And, you know, I still retain and I still enjoy edgy humor so long as there's a good joke there. But at the same time, I feel like over time, there's been this kind of like weird revelation for me where, you know, at a certain point in my life, if I saw something like any kind of Nazi imagery, my base assumption would be immediately that like, oh, this is ironic no matter what it is.
Yeah.
And now at this point, over the past 5 years, it's like, oh wait, there's people that are actually kind of serious about this, you know? Or it's like I like it seemed like such an easy thing to be like, oh well, that's so obviously bad that it has to be a joke. And yet now it's like, oh, wait a minute. There's some people that actually mean it, and they're disguising themselves in these groups of other people that still feel like, yeah, these things are a joke, and you shouldn't categorize everybody that, you know, might have an edgy joke as somebody who genuinely believes it. But there are people in there that are kind of like moles or like agents for that kind of thing, where they're
it's a diverse community of people that at some point have considered themselves outsiders, and that's like the reason they found themselves there, and they're finding themselves on the board. That's how it seems to me. But I do think like at a certain point, like if you're only obsessed with edginess, you're going to find that edge, and there's not a whole lot there on the other side for you. I agree. I think irony poisoning, someone mentioned irony poisoning. I think it's like in the same way humans aren't sort of you know, equipped to deal with the amount of all the stuff the internet throws at you, they aren't equipped to deal with the amount of cynicism it throws at you either. That cynicism at a certain point can just be like fatiguing and paralyzing. So
sorry.
No, go ahead. Let's
my other roommates in chat asking if there was anything you wanted to include in the film but didn't due to time constraints and other factors. I think you kind of already answered this.
Yeah, there's a number of things. You know, there's a section we're going to release that was shot in Russia that we're going to release as an extra.
Oh, really?
Which that's crazy, because it's like, as we were a very like scrappy team, we found a team in Russia to shoot it for us. They did a great job, and it's a great vignette. And it was something
Can you
that we were
describe it?
taking. Sure. It's about this woman, Pepe Angelo, who does these oil paintings of Pepe.
Okay.
And she's a, yeah, she does these like very ornate oil paintings of like the Last Supper, but they'll all be Pepe's. And it just didn't fit the film. At a certain point, it was something we were taking in and out of the film over and over and over again. And we would have like long arguments about it. And it's funny, like when we were at Sundance, someone who had seen the rough cut that we'd submitted with, who was a judge, like there's these seats at Sundance that are labeled for like the judges and audience. And I overheard one of the judges go, yeah, that was pretty good. I mean, it's still too long. Oh, they cut out the Russian girl. That was stupid. So it's like, you can't please everybody. But yeah, that was a constant conversation.
Get the final cut. Have like 4 different cuts. Blade Runner.
Yeah, I tried to avoid that. My mantra in the edit was always like, let's make it interesting, not perfect, and if something's working, let's not overthink it. And that's the only reason we could get it done.
There was an interesting question a bit earlier. Somebody asking if there's any YouTubers that you watch.
There are YouTubers that I watch for comedy. I don't watch a lot of YouTubers, but who's the slap bass kid? Davey415. I think that kid's hilarious. Do you know who that guy is?
It rings a bell.
He's the Italian slap bass aficionado.
Somebody in chat will point it out.
Someone will point it out. I like Contra. I do like a lot of these new. I've been very encouraged by the amount of creativity on display with a lot of the new sort of lefty political voices on YouTube.
Oh yeah,
Philosophy Tube, Contra. I think, and someone mentioned Hassan. I watch Hassan sometimes. Those guys are like it's like base jumping when I watch them. It's like arguing politics while playing video games is something that there's something that you're arguing with an alt-right guy while playing a video game. It feels crazy to me. So that's like watching a Daredevil or something.
It's a fun category for sure.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like good new voices in that too. It's like it's an ever growing genre, I guess.
I'm just really impressed with one of Natalie's recent videos is like almost an hour and a half long. Like it's really ambitious and well made, and like I think her stuff's really fascinating. I also love the Instagram feed of New York Nico. I think he's like the best documentarian working right now. I think
never heard of them.
His feed on Instagram has always been great. And his father was an art director at the New York Times named Stephen Heller. He's written over 50 books on art criticism. He's a great guy. But New York Nico, Nicholas Heller, he's just filming everyday New Yorkers. He's really focusing on the stuff that makes New York, small businesses, people who are like eccentric and interesting, people who hang out in public spaces all day. And he just celebrates New York for all its like weird and wild vitality. I love his feed. And during the pandemic, it's been awesome to watch his stuff. I think, he's focusing on businesses that are having a hard time staying open. He's really focusing on sort of this positivity that's happening in the city as people are dealing with it. That's been my favorite documentary work done this year, probably.
Awesome. I've seen this question a few times in chat. Somebody wondering if there's any other cultural meme that you think would make for a good documentary.
Interesting. I mean, we definitely wondered while we were making Feels Good Man if Pepe could hold an entire film. There's so many variations to Pepe. We could have easily made the film 3 hours. I don't think it would have been as long. Let me think about it. I mean, there's certainly ideas that you like if you're thinking about meme in the broader context. I don't know about an image macro. I don't know if you can make another feature about an image macro. But in the way that kind of like cultural memes persist as conspiracy theories persist, or misinformation, or even slogans and brand advertising, I think there is a way to talk about memes and kind of the Marshall McLuhan sense of culture.
Like in the broader context.
Yeah. I think you could do like, the media is the message part 2 for the internet age, and if you could do it really well, that would be interesting. But yeah, it would be. We joke that the sequel to Feels Good Man will be Dat Boy the movie, and that's probably that's probably going to stay a joke. But
okay,
yeah.
All right, we got some other questions in chat.
Sure.
Fire away. This is not organized in any way. We are just chatting. As per as per the category on Twitch. See, I don't know who that question's for, Antifa chat. Antifa cat boy. Did you ever use 8chan?
I didn't. I mean, I lurked on 8chan.
Oh, really? So you technically
Not much.
used it.
I guess I used it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lurking is using.
I suppose. No, I spent most of my time on 4chan because this was really about what was going on in the 2015 moment. Yeah, I mean, certainly the 8chan story and the soap operas between 2chan, 4chan, 8chan, like all that stuff was something that is obviously a pretty wild story. So yeah, we kind of drew the line at 8chan. In the film. I mean, we refer to the chans, but we don't get into 8chan too much.
Here's a question. So with you retaining the rights to your film,
sure,
self-distributing, do you have any kind of Oscars campaign in mind?
Well, so we do technically qualify for the Oscar, which is unique to this year because of the shutdowns, what would normally be qualifying for an Oscar isn't there. So we were in 7 of the 9 qualifying festivals. So yeah, the Oscars are like anything else. It's a weird underground of publicists and kind of who you know. So I think we would be an extremely, most documentaries that end up getting nominated, often there's like $1 million campaign to try to get them nominated, which is kind of crazy because most documentaries, even the documentaries you've heard of and we've talked about, don't come close to making $1 million.
Of course.
Like, no one gets rich from documentaries. And so yeah, I mean, who knows? We're doing like an extremely scrappy DIY Oscar campaign. The way that works is you first campaign to get on the short list. And then if you get on the short list, then there's a whole other like world of campaigning you would have to do. And frankly, we probably don't have the money for that. So
yeah,
so our goal would be to try to hustle to the short list. And I think that would be enough for us. But at the same time,
that'd be great.
It would be great. And at first whenever someone asked me about Oscars, I'd be like, that's stupid. I don't want to talk about it. But now I'm kind of like leaning into the ambition of it. I mean, this film has been such like a unique experience that, yeah, I'm proud of the movie, but I will say there's also really great films this year. There really are. Like, I do like if we're going to, like if I were to indulge the fantasy of us winning an Oscar, like our film is not better than Time. like there's
you should indulge the fantasy of getting nominated at least.
I will indulge the fantasy of getting nominated because I do think I am proud of the ambition, whether you like Feels Good Man or not. I'm proud of the ambition of it, and I think that was something that is Giorgio in the chat.
Oh yeah, thank you for joining. You left really quickly before I could say that. Sorry.
Yeah, so we're Giorgio is our meme magician on the crew, and he believes we're going to win all the Oscars.
Do it.
Dressing,
no reason not to. Other than budgetary issues.
So if you guys want to help us meme magic our way into getting the Oscars, if you want a frog JPEG to win the Oscar, let's make it happen.
If you can meme a man into the White House, you can meme Feels Good Man into the Oscars.
That's what I'm talking about. And Giorgio wrote the ending song, and that was something that he wants to point out, that he wrote the ending song with Sharon Van Etten, and so Who knows?
You can
Maybe
campaign for best original
song.
song. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, totally.
That's happened for documentaries before.
Yeah, I mean, it would be crazy to have a documentary about a meme when the Oscars, but memes are important stories. So
it's a good story even if it wasn't about a meme, you know?
Yeah.
There's substance to it.
Yeah. Well, and I think the way social media has affected us is the biggest story of our generation. It's a silly story,
very relevant.
but I think it's the most relevant story that's affecting everyone in some way. So
yeah, it does a great job at making things taking a set amount of years from my memory and being like, okay, this is how it kind of makes sense in context, which I think is like an important thing to do right now.
So that's something that I was actually kind of surprised by when we took the film to True False, for instance, because True False. Also, the thing about True False, it's a small town, but crowds show up for docs. Like there was we had like 1,500 people for one screening. That's like great. In a big, and it was great. It was really gratifying. And so there's obviously the standard doc going crowd, which is maybe skews a little older. And then there's this other group of people that showed up because obviously it's the Pepe movie. And I didn't sort of expect people to view the film as like, oh, this is like a punk rock documentary. This is my youth culture kind of thing. Like people recognized it kind of as a youth culture film. And that surprised me. People are like, oh, I can't believe you told this story. This was kind of my teenage years or whatever. Not that they were like fascists on pole, just that, this was just part of being extremely online when you're 14 or 15.
Any more questions in chat?
What's next?
Let's see. We already covered why you can't pay to watch the documentary in some territories. Sorry, they're trying.
We're working on it. We want to take it to the world, but some things are out of our control. If you, write Netflix and tell them to pay us money.
Yeah. Netflix actually has like a suggestion form. You can actually, there's like some sort of form on their webpage where you can be like, hey, why don't you have this movie? So who knows?
Oh, really?
Enough people. Yeah, they actually do have one of those things.
I mean,
as far as I know, they don't have that for the Oscars, but.
Yeah, there is a larger conversation about how Netflix is picking up less and less independently made things because they want to know that things fit into their algorithmic buckets. And there's not really an avenue for people who are it's really hard for like a first filmmaker who wants to make like, the equivalent of like a mumblecore film or something like that. It's really hard to find like a distribution model for those kind of films. And it's hard also for documentaries. Another film I would say, like if you're into kind of like maybe Cassavetes kind of films, Bloody Nose Empty Pockets, I think is a good one to rent from the Ross brothers. It's going to test your patience a little bit, but I think it's a good movie, and was kind of playing at the film festivals. I also think there's a movie that's coming out. I think it's been pushed to January called Some Kind of Heaven by Lance Oppenheim. And that movie is it's a really good film. It's a verite doc that feels like you're watching a narrative film. And it takes place in a retirement community in Florida. And it's a really well-made film.
That's on my watch list already.
Yeah, you'll love it. I think you'll really love it. I think Lance is 23 and he's like a wonderkind.
Okay, great.
Really good filmmaker.
Somebody in chat, my roommate, is wondering, what is your spirit animal?
My spirit animal,
AKA fursona.
Oh, my fursona is probably my dog, who's like she's a street dog. She's like a Jack
You are
Russell.
your own dog.
I am my own dog. I never thought I would love an animal, and then this little weirdo showed up. So, so yeah, I would say my own dog is my spirit animal. I'll take that, normie furry. That's fine. I'm allowed to love my dog. You guys, here.
Such a normie answer.
I know.
What was the hardest part about the movie to work on? What was your biggest challenge?
But yeah, we were a dog movie. Pretty much everyone on the film had dogs.
Sorry, I didn't realize your headphones were off.
Oh,
What
no
was the
problem.
biggest challenge working on the film? What was the hardest part to make?
I mean, um, there's two different answers to that. I mean, the first one is initially getting people to fund your idea when you're a first-time filmmaker and you're making kind of
Hmm.
a difficult film. So the first year, we just kind of bootstrapped it because we knew that in order for us to find any funding for the movie, we'd basically have to finish half of it.
Hmm.
So that was challenging, but it was also really fun. Like it was fun to work with our editors, and it was, it was just like an art project. We were trying to figure out if we could do it. And then I do think like certainly there were some parts in the edit where we really struggled to find how the tone of the animation was going to be in the film. We had one version of the film that had a lot more kind of storyboards where Pepe was really on his own journey that had nothing to do with the other narrative of the film.
Hmm.
And then we realized that when you're watching it, it just takes you out of the storyline too much. So we kind of had to pare back the animation a fair amount. And then we also just had to find really talented animators. And we just got lucky that we were able to find like this crew of people who didn't know each other at first, but then became like really good pals while they were working on the film. So that was cool. But and we had 3 different editors, and so each editor is like, we hired people as we could afford them, and so it was a film with a steep learning curve. So each editor kind of had their own strengths and weaknesses, and you would figure out kind of who's good at what and slot them into those sections.
Hmm. Yeah, the animation complemented it really well. It didn't feel like out of place or weird. It felt like a very natural version of the comics. So
Yeah, that was our hope that um, maybe if you've seen the film now, whenever you see Pepe, you go back and think about those animated sequences, or you go back and think about Matt's comics, and
hmm.
you have maybe like a slightly different understanding of the character. Yeah, so we wanted to kind of canonize Pepe a little bit.
Hmm.
That was our idea, and that was also what I thought as like a filmmaker. That was the thing that I thought I could bring to the story that was unique. Like there were other people that knew the Pepe story, but I felt like, oh, since I could make the animations, that was the thing that I could lend to the story that
Hmm.
would be unique.
So what was the financing process like anyway? So you said you had to basically have like half of it finished before you even went for financing. But like
Yeah.
what was the actual process of getting funding for the film?
Um, I can go into the broad strokes. I mean, initially I pitched the film at first I pitched the film by myself, and then
Hmm.
Giorgio came on board. And I pitched it to a variety of production companies, some of which
Hmm.
I'm sure people have heard of, but I'm not going to go into the
Sure.
details of it.
Yeah.
And people were always interested in the story. And at that point, we had a minute. I'd maybe completed like 4 big interviews, and we had a really good 1.5-minute teaser
Hmm.
that one of our editors, Drew Blattman, cut. And it's just like it's still like maybe better than the trailer. It's like it's a really good teaser, but it's a rip teaser. We ripped a lot of stuff off the internet. We ripped a lot of pop culture stuff, and they would call it a rip reel. And so I took that around, and there was actually one very well-known production company that's made amazing stuff, and they were totally into it, and then they ghosted me. Like they
Mm.
just were like, they were basically like in the room, like, we're on board. We want to help you however we can help you. And Giorgio and I left there, and we were like slapping high fives, and we were like, oh shit, we're going to make this movie. Here we go. And then literally never heard from them again, like ghosted.
Yeah.
And I actually was like a comedy show, and ran into one of the guys who we had the meeting with. And I was like, hey, the Feels Good Man guy, we were supposed to get contracts from you. And he was just kind of like, he obviously wanted to kind of wriggle out of the conversation.
That
Um,
sucks. I hate that.
so that was, and then we applied for dozens and dozens of grants, and those are their own process, because you don't only have to write the grant, you have to design the grant. You have to like
Yeah.
make a whole
A lot of
PDF that
weird
looks good.
arbitrary rules for grants.
Yeah. And as a first-time filmmaker, it's going to be hard for you to get a grant. Like that's just kind of
Hmm.
the way it is. And so we didn't get any of the grants. And so at a certain point, we're like, well, we just have to start making the things. So I'd work really hard, save up money, and then we go shoot. So like the section in Canada,
Hmm.
for instance, where the crypto guys, I borrowed money from my
Vancouver.
girlfriend's sister, and then I worked 3 jobs to pay for that, cutting
Wow.
commercials for Sephora makeup tutorials.
Hmm.
And then we used all that money and went and shot for 3 days in Canada, and it went really well. And I was happy to make the sacrifice, you know. And that was, and Giorgio bought a camera, so we were able to just kind of use that rather than stop, you know, renting cameras. And then and we relied on friends who would work for half price. And then at a certain point, and then Aaron, our editor, who's cut Hail Satan and a lot of these other movies that people have mentioned in chat, he's an old pal of mine. And I talked to him very early on. I'd even maybe talked about him about directing Feels Good Man, because I was just like, I'll do the animation and I need to find like another person to do it. And so Aaron really encouraged me to make it, and he was able to basically give us a month for free. And so we had a 45-minute cut, and then we started taking it around to people, and Aaron had cut the Mr. Rogers documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the people that had helped fund the Mr. Rogers documentary liked Aaron, and they liked our press materials, they liked our cut, and they took a chance on the film, and they gave us enough money to keep it afloat for 6 or 7 months. It allowed us to get an office. It allowed us to hire an editor.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were completely in the red until we hit Sundance. And then once you get into Sundance, you like Giorgio and I hadn't taken any salary at any point during the filmmaking. And so like I was working, you know, jobs all during Feels Good Man. And in fact, I was like pitching another show like while we were locking edit and doing all the final mixes and everything, just because I needed the money. And so yeah, but once you get into Sundance, there's this whole kind of murky world opens up to you, who people, now that your film has been validated, they're willing to give you some money as donations. So we were able to close our funding gap through a variety of donations, through people whose names are in a lot of films that you like. There's a very small group of people that fund documentaries. And you know, that's how we were able to sort of piece it together. But it was something that really only happened because we believed in it so much. And that's, I think we realized that if you just lean on something enough, it'll eventually have a momentum of its own. And so
make it happen.
Yep. You just kind of make it happen. And I was totally obsessed. Like I did not sleep. I did not, I was about to say I didn't eat, but I ate too much. I did a lot of emotional eating. I probably put on 30 pounds while making the film. It was just something that I was like completely obsessed with. It was a movie about someone who I loved, and it was about a subject matter that I thought was like really unique and fun. And yeah.
What would you say, I guess 2 questions. What would you say were your biggest expenses on the film? Was it just like hiring editors, or like was it travel? And the other question that you don't have to answer if you don't want to is, what was the budget for the entire movie by the end of it?
I'm not going to go into the specifics of the budget, but it was around, it was around $500,000. And that was something that, the biggest expense is time. You need to buy yourself time, because you really are it takes a long time to edit a film that's really nuanced and complicated. And I know that probably if you're a younger person in the chat, that sounds like a phenomenal amount of money. But when you're talking about paying people over a 3-year period, it's really not very much money at all. You know,
not slave labor.
And we paid everybody. Like there was no unpaid interns. Like I had been treated poorly when I was like working on things in my 20s, and I didn't want to do the same thing on Feels Good. And so, you know, no unpaid interns. We always paid people on time. We tried to be as fair as possible. And we did the thing where, you know, you were like, oh, we'll give you points, but then the reality is like the points probably don't ever pay you anything, you know. Like, so but you know, people who work in documentaries as an industry are like really earnest and smart and hardworking, and it really is an industry that, while you have to get the money to make the film, it's not an industry that's really about like making a bunch of money off something, you know. So the people you meet are all kind of on the same grind, and you're just trying to figure out how to get it made and then move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people in general, maybe some people in this chat, but most people don't realize just how low of a budget $500,000 is for a film.
Yeah, no, and
it's
I mean,
incredibly low budget.
It's incredibly low budget, and you know, I was hoping that, you know, if we sold it, I'd be able to pay like the animators like more money. Like the animators really worked for very little money because we had to hire them at the end.
Yeah.
And like one of them, Nicole, had a full-time job. She would stay late and animate on the film after her job was over. And so it just kind of, people were willing to work on it because they liked the story. And that really was a gift to us, for sure.
That's how a lot of great movies are made, just with passion.
Yeah. That was our thinking. So does Giorgio have an answer? Giorgio was the only unpaid intern. That's true. That's true. that dude worked super hard. This movie got made because Giorgio's enthusiasm was contagious and pushed all of us forward.
So you might be disappointed to hear that this is my now second favorite film of the year.
What's your first favorite film?
The new Charlie Kaufman.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Sorry.
Hey, I respect. No, that's fine. I mean, I love Charlie Kaufman. I found that movie to be this is kind of the only film of his that I tested my patience to the point where I was like, I might be out on this. Like, I love Anomalisa. I like Synecdoche. But yeah, this one felt a little self-indulgent to me in a way that I, at a certain point, I stopped caring about the characters. And then I also found it to be like, I love the dance sequence, but the animated pig kind of struck me as, I don't know, there were just things about it that took me out of it and I didn't get back in, you know, kind of.
That's all right.
But I respect that. I mean, I think I think as a critic, like, it's your job to really interrogate a complicated work earnestly, and that seems like a film that deserves that. But I think I also just watched it after 3 glasses of wine and I was tired. And I definitely nodded off, which feels like a crime. But yeah, being John Malkovich is great. There's a bunch of it. I mean, but I also like I think Anomalisa is such a realistic film. Like, it's such a unique film. Like, I mean, his ambition is always enviable. Yeah.
The most human film not featuring human beings.
That scene in that scene where they have sex in the hotel room is like one of the most human moments of filmmaking I can think of. Yeah.
I was very happy to interview both of them about that.
Oh, really? What was Kaufman like? How did you interview him?
Oh, it was so I was at TIFF 2015, and Duke Johnson, the other director and the lead animator in the film, was on Twitter, and now his Twitter account is just deleted. I don't know why. But at the time he was on Twitter, and I got him to follow me back and DM'd him and sent him my my big analysis videos of Synecdoche, New York. And apparently, I don't know if that's how Charlie discovered them, but either way, before the interview, Charlie had seen those videos, and I guess I was one of literally 3 interviews that they did for the film at TIFF. So like other like big publication companies, and I'm just like this random YouTuber, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's great.
He is in real life exactly how he is in any interview you've seen him in. He's like just a very real on it. He's not putting on a performance or anything, which is, you know, expected based
He's
on
obsessed with
what he
rotting
creates.
bodies. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a
I
good
do like his
experience
weird
for sure.
obsession about body rot. It's not
Yeah,
something
I mean,
people
he's
focus
got
on in
his
films a lot.
Kaufmanisms for sure.
Yeah.
I'm on page like 200 of his book right now. I got to get back to it as soon as the film festival stuff's over. But
That's cool though. I mean, it's that how do you feel like when a filmmaker like reaches out to you after seeing one of your reviews?
well, it's happening more often at this point,
Right.
which is, I guess, kind of odd, because I don't really. I know, like numbers can get to a lot of people. There's people that have less subscribers than me that are just so up their own ass. They think they're the hottest shit, and a
Yeah.
lot of like influencers, etc. But I just still see myself as like a real person, and I hope that what I project onto the internet reflects that. That I don't become a product. That I don't become, you know, this facade. That I still retain this idea of being like a person.
Yeah.
And so it is weird, but also like in some senses understandable and expected that um, you know, I get these opportunities because of the numbers that I have, or because of the audience that I have,
Yeah.
to be able to reach out to filmmakers like yourself. Even, you know, it's like pretty cool that you're doing an interview with me right now.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. I think one, I mean, it's just like it's usually a better conversation to have someone because there's a certain creativity to your interviews that I think kind of I think it's something where you're kind of taking your criticism and using it to express your own creativity, which I think is cool and a little bit
Thank you.
different. And then also, you know, as people that are self-releasing the film, we have to sort of rely on social media. And, you know, obviously this film is about Pepe the Frog. It's about a meme. Like
Internet's the place to do it.
Totally. And like all the conversations that are happening in chat were happening all over the internet in 2015 and 2016. And so, yeah, this is the place to have those conversations. So the fact that like people like yourself, especially if you're someone who had spent some time on 4chan as a younger person, doesn't feel like the film's corny is a pretty great thing. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I do agree with you in the sense that, you know, like traditional media film criticism is a very different medium than current YouTube, like video film criticism.
Yeah.
Where depending on how you handle it, you know, there's the opportunity to inject a lot of your own personality into it, which, you know, not to say that that's impossible for traditional text-based film criticism, but YouTube kind of opens the door for like a very different kind of breed of that in a way.
Yeah.
You know, like Roger Ebert was very poetic in terms of how he presented his criticisms and his personality and thoughts. And although I wouldn't say that mine is, you know, my reviews are as much of like a sense of poetry or essay as his, they're more of like their own kind of style of comedy, like video. You know, it's not just a review, it's like kind of a comedy video in its own way.
Yeah, no, I mean you're writing bits, but obviously there's a perspective to all of it, which I think is kind of like what people ultimately respond to in terms of criticism. I think like, you know, whether that's like Lester Bangs or Pauline Kael, there's a reason why their voices are consistent and people like those voices, and it helps them kind of think about their own thoughts about something differently. So yeah, I mean, certainly I think reading criticism helps you be a better viewer of what you're making, and then also think about the choices you're making within the film, you know? And I do think like art school, like even though this is my first film, both Giorgio and I went through art school, and art school really toughens you up because you have to like just go through critique constantly. You have to like, if you take your ego into every critique, you're just going to be miserable. And so we really had that sort of ethos in the edit where it's like, all right, let's tear everything apart and put it back together again. And I think I think we're like a little bit older, so I think we've been through a variety of different things. And then I think it was also where critique is the biggest thing that you can learn from.
It's also important to separate critique in ways where, like, yeah, there's criticism coming from every angle, but you should be able to decide for yourself what is constructive and legitimate versus something that, someone can say, this is why I didn't like it, but you disagree with it, and you're comfortable with the choices that don't agree with that person, right?
I'm actually disappointed that Feels Good Man hasn't gotten worse reviews. There's kind of a moment where I was like, I want to read a review that hates this and hates it for a reason that I hadn't thought of. And we haven't gotten that review yet. Like even the like conservative site, like there was a Christian website that liked it.
Oh yeah.
It gave it like 3 halos and 2 pitchforks and suggested youth groups watch it. And I was like, what? Like that's the that's been funny to me. I want someone to really tear it a new asshole, but in like a way that is really well done.
Okay. So you would say like the vast majority of criticism that you've received over it has been like somewhat legitimate, is what you're saying?
Well, I think documentaries get viewed in a different way. I think a lot of people who review documentaries don't hold them up with the same rigor that they hold up with other films. And so I think we've gotten a little bit of like a soft touch because people view it as a documentary and they don't talk about it like they might talk about another film. I think, and sometimes like the real doc nerds feel as though maybe we strayed a little bit, like our perspective was a little bit too loose or too arty. But yeah, certainly there's a handful of docs, like there's a handful of reviews that, the New York Times review is like a word salad, but it's great. Like it's a total like jump, like it's a really fun review. I enjoyed reading it. I would have enjoyed reading it even if it wasn't our film. When I read a really good one, it's really fun, and I kind of want to have that experience where I read a bad one and it's also fun, or even someone that, so we knew all the bad comments were going to come, but
not the same
predictable thing. Not the same thing.
Yeah. All right. Any final questions or comments in chat? I think we're about good to wrap this up.
Totally.
Been at it for a good 3 hours, I think. It's a good amount of time. See if anybody comes up with some good answerable questions. I don't think Arthur has a Twitter.
No. Yeah. No. I don't really.
Fucking normie.
I know.
He's on Facebook.
No, I'm not. No, I don't like the internet.
No. Fuck the internet.
I think I have a healthy amount of skepticism about it, but yeah, it's a career necessity to a certain degree.
One of the questions is, what do you hope to accomplish most as a filmmaker?
I think honestly, the honest question to that is I just wanted to make a movie. And so the fact that we were able to make this film was kind of that. That was my ambition. And I feel like we made a film that I'm really proud of. So I feel like as a filmmaker, I'm kind of right now in this space where I'm just thinking about this with a lot of gratitude, honestly. So I think because I think it's rare, like this film was really hard to make, but it's the hardness was one of the things that really made it special. And it was really made with a lot of love. And I think that was something that I'm just reflecting on now. And, you know, I would like to make other films, but I don't think I'll ever make a film that I was like as singularly obsessed with as this film. So yeah, so that's the way I'm going to answer that question. So I would like, I mean, the broad strokes is I would like to tell stories about how art and politics collide in interesting ways. And I would like to tell stories that even if they're narrative, they still involve a certain amount of journalism that reflects the world back on itself. So those are the stories that I'm kind of interested to tell.
All right, this one you might have answered before. Do you think the movie might change public perception of Pepe being a hate symbol?
Maybe. I mean,
yeah.
Sure. Yes, I do. I mean, I think I think the more people kind of understand the origins of Pepe, and the more people continue to just use him as a reaction image or a funny meme, then yeah, eventually I hope that that Pepe will be taken off the hate symbol, you know, database, and that the goodwill that people feel about the character will become kind of the next wave of Pepe. And I think that's possible. I think if people see the film, then you know, I do think it makes you think about how things move off the internet into real life. I think it kind of talks a little bit about like accountability in culture. So yeah, maybe. I do think I think we're in a transitional moment where we have two different generations that can't get along, one of whom grew up on the internet and the other one are late adopters to the internet and can't sift through all the misinformation. And I think we're at a transitional moment. I think Pepe is emblematic of that transitional moment. And I hope that within 10 or 15 years, we all kind of like stand back from this moment and realize that all the conflict, I mean, maybe the conflict will continue. I don't know. But hopefully realize that this conflict was a temporary thing while we were all sorting out, like we're reorganizing society around the internet completely. It's changed every single facet of everyone's
constantly.
life. Yeah. And it's not something that we are equipped to deal with. So, you know, I think Pepe is a case study for this moment. And he's a funny, weird, derpy case study for this moment. So, yeah, I'm curious to see how the film ages. I'm curious to see if in 10 years people will be like, oh, these animations look janky, or, you know, I'm curious to see if it'll hold up or not. Yeah. If
That's
I'll,
great. Yeah. I guess last question. Somebody asking, do you have any questions for us? Do you have any questions for my Twitch chat?
Is this a group of people that come to your chat all the time? Like, are you seeing a lot of familiar names?
Yeah, I see a lot of familiar names here. It's a small, I don't have a huge Twitch stream. I know, like, if you've ever seen Hassan's Twitch stream, it's like constant scrolling. You can't even read the chat. I've got a good community here.
Yeah.
Bunch of people that regularly watch my shit. It's a good little family I got going on.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it seems great. I don't necessarily have like, I mean, I guess if there's stuff that you guys as like a family of people that have conversations constantly are curious about, I can answer that, but no. I mean,
no.
It's people, not really.
No questions.
No.
You're
I didn't realize people love Hassan so much.
I mean, he is a popular Twitch streamer. Probably the most popular political streamer on Twitch, actually.
Oh, is it just because he's like a Chad? And everyone likes to just get domed by his like.
It's probably because he's a Chad.
Socialist Chad.
Yeah. All right.
Right on. Well,
last opportunity for a good question. Nope. All right.
Right.
All right. We're gonna end this.
Okay.
That was a good stream.
Everybody. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will be back on editing more on this same Twitch stream, so hang on 20 minutes and I will return to the stream. I'm going to end it for now, though. No, I'm not going to raid Vexel because I'm going to be back streaming. All right.
See everybody.
Thank you so much for joining. Peace out.
Thanks for watching. My $5 and up patrons are Lemonade Warrior, Built Nicotina, Olivia Spores, Dana, Eric Hill, Malav Shah, Diegesis, Mechadong, Brandon Stuper, and Pit Wang. Take care.